Wes Buck Show.
It's uncut, it's unfiltered. This is the show of shows. This is the biggest names in drag racing. No holds barred.
Speaking his mind.
I've never had a problem expressing my opinions, but what we're doing here is bigger than that. These are conversations that need to be had in an unfiltered way.
Exploring hot topics.
Drag racing's all I've ever done. It's all I care to do.
And spreading the gospel of drag racing.
I respect the history. I appreciate how far we've come, but I want more for this sport, and I'll fight for it. This is the great American motorsport, drag racing.
The Wes Buck Show starts in 3, 2, 1.
Hey gang, Wes Buck here, Drag Illustrated Magazine, checking in. It is Wednesday, August 24th, 2022. I hope you're doing well. Thank you for joining us today around Drag Racing's water cooler. For you heard me say it a second ago, didn't you? The drag racing talk show, the only one. No, I'm just joking. My favorite one, right? And I hope it's all of yours favorite show. Thank you so much for joining us here today, fresh off a huge weekend in the sport of drag racing. I'll share my funny Brainerd, Minnesota story. It's not a big zoo debacle, but I did get trapped up there for a couple of days earlier this week. Again, thank you all for joining us. Remember, click like, click share, click subscribe, join the movement, be a part of our family, help us spread the gospel of drag racing. We have an absolute barn burner of a show for you guys today. Steve Torrence, fresh off major win at the NHRA Lucas Oil Nationals. We knew it was only a matter of time until the champ reminded us what the champ does. Took out Tony Schumacher in a fantastic final round there in front of a capacity crowd. I don't know that I've seen a crowd like that. Maybe the Gator Nationals earlier this year, despite the weather snafus they contended with while we were down there. But man, what a weekend for the sport of drag racing. A little after Steve, about 2:45 Central Standard Time, we'll be joined by Shane Westerfield, who is on an absolute tear in NHRA Top Alcohol. Funny car competition. I believe the guy's been to 8 final rounds here in 2022. Every race he goes to the finals. He's won 6 of them. Looking forward to hearing from Shane in just a little bit. But before we get that far along, let me crank down the tunes here. Let me introduce my partners in crime, my co-host here on Drag Illustrated's The Wes Buck Show, the one, the only's Mike Carpenter, JT Hudson. JT's doing something else.
Yeah,
what are you doing?
Not paying attention.
Not paying attention.
Yeah, like always.
What's the good word, my friends? How goes it? It seems like I've been out of the loop this week, right? I got stranded.
Yeah, well, you just got back.
Literally,
yeah.
Just got back.
You had a little extended trip in Minnesota.
Man, it was, I'll tell you guys about it briefly because it was an experience, and you just think about what everybody in the world is contending with right now as far as air travel is concerned. You see it all across social media, everywhere you look. It's just one dramatic ordeal after another when it comes to air travel. So I had a Sunday night flight booked home. I thought, I'm in tall cotton out here, buddy. I'm going to be home, be able to take my kids to school Monday morning, do the whole song and dance. I get to the airport, right? Go through security, do the rigmarole. Brett Underwood and Freddie Turza from VP Racing Fuels in tow are incredibly, we think we've lucked out, right? They're at gate E15. I think I'm at gate E12. I'm like, oh man, we're going to be able to hang out, have a cocktail. This is going to be a nice, relaxing evening in the airport before we all head home, go our separate ways. I sit down, shockingly, at a bar inside the airport, order a double vodka, right? Double vodka Don here. And literally no more than get the glass slid my direction, and I get a notification on my phone that your flight's not been delayed, right? Not been changed, been canceled. And not only will I not be getting back to the Dallas-Fort Worth area until sometime on Tuesday, I'm going to have to go through Washington, D.C. and stay the night there. Right. And it was in that moment that I just literally called up a friend and bought a jet. I thought, you know what? I am so exhausted with this. I think that is like the next order of business, at least like a King Air.
I've been wanting to get my pilot license. I told you that a long time ago.
If you think, whoa, Mike, quiet. Mike, if you think I'm going to let you fly me anywhere, you are out of your mind.
Really?
No, you don't like riding in a car with me. Well, I sure as hell don't like riding in a plane with
because
you.
I'm a good driver.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, says the multiple barrel rolls.
Yeah,
says the person that watches Netflix
records.
series while driving. That's
well,
all.
I mean, we'd have to customize that jet. It definitely would need cup holders.
I think we need, yeah, for sure. I would be satisfied with just like a King Air. I really would. Twin engine plane, reliable. You can go a long distance. I think it's a doable thing. Anyways, incredibly, and I'm not like the flip out guy. It takes a lot for me to get to that point. So I'm on my phone, and I think I dialed one or two 800 numbers, and it was like a 3 hour and 36 minute. A representative from American Airlines will happily call you back in 3 hours and 36 minutes. And I go, yeah, I ain't got 3 hours and 36 minutes. So I walked up to a gate agent and I said, hey, listen, I'm not going to throw a big fit. And I get your hands are tied. But flying through Washington, D.C., to stay the night and then get back to DFW Tuesday night, that seems unreasonable. Like that doesn't, I don't know that I'm okay with that. That doesn't, I would just as soon drive, right? Like it's only 1,000 miles. I've driven that far in my sleep, done it before, and I was this close because there was no chance I was going to deal with a connection. I mean, I'm not trying to be any kind of way, but there was no chance I was going to run the risk of getting stranded in DC. So anyways, by the grace of God, the young lady goes, hey, I think let me just look at some options or whatever. And she tried to rebook me on other airlines, which I thought was awfully sweet. And I ended up catching a flight home yesterday. I got home in the yesterday afternoon, direct flight from Minneapolis to DFW. But I did have to spend like an additional 48 hours in downtown Minneapolis. It was quite the deal. I didn't pack a lot of clothes because I was planning on a 2-day trip.
Turn them inside out, buddy.
Oh, dude. It was one of those, historically, I'm a bad overpacker, right? This was like the one trip I was so proud. I told my wife, Alicia, I said, hey, check this out. I'm showing her my suitcase. And I'm like, I've got it. Like, this is a sleep-in outfit. Like, if I get a wild hair to work out or something, I got that. I got some clothes to wear to the racetrack or whatnot. And I tell you what, man, Sunday night, it was not looking fantastic. So anyways, I did finally get home. What a weekend in Brainerd. I'm sure you guys followed along online. I was so glad that I went. I haven't been to Brainerd International Raceway in quite a while, to be honest.
Probably what? Almost 10 or 15 years, right?
10 years, easily 10 years. I hadn't been up there, and I was so glad I went.
We got to go. But I'm worried if we take JT that he'll never return. Like he'll just.
It'll be. We better like
he'll be
bring
a permanent
his family.
zoo resident.
Yeah, we better bring his family so they can all kind of say their goodbyes because that will be the end
I'd
of,
worry about bringing
John Thomas
bond money first.
Yes. I didn't participate, admittedly, in a lot of craziness. I would if I had the chance, maybe. But the whole deal, just seeing the grandstands that full of people to watch drag racing, I think sometimes we get in our own head as drag racers and members of this community, and you hear people kind of beat on us all the time. They're comparing us to stick and ball sports. They're comparing us to NASCAR. They're comparing us to Formula One. But when you roll up on the starting line there at the NHRA Lucas Oil Nationals and you look out at the sea of humanity, I'm talking elbow to elbow, 3-4 deep at the fence to the scoreboards, my heart grew 6 sizes. I mean, it was a incredible moment, and they were into it, right? I mean, I had heard stories in the past that a lot of the people that camp at the legendary zoo there at Brainerd International Raceway, many of them don't even make it to the grandstands to watch the race.
Not surprising.
And if that was the case, I'd be surprised, because I'm telling you, everybody on the planet Earth seemed to be in Brainerd, Minnesota this past weekend. Huge, just a big win, I think.
That's always a well-supported event. I think it's an important market for an HRA, important region of the country that they kind of only visit once. But it's hard. It's a little bit difficult to get racers there. There are a couple of other tracks that kind of meet that criteria where car counts are down. They only had 2 pro classes running. But it's
I'd like
still
to talk
very
about that a little later in the show.
By the fans. Yeah.
I think for me, when what I saw there in Brainerd, and here in about 1 minute, we will be joined by Champ. It's a little bit of a mouthful to say it every time I reference Steve Torrence, but that's how I like to do it. The quadruple champ himself, fresh off, like I said, that big win. I think fresh off might be the new drinking game. Said it 3 times in 7 seconds. But
Gotcha.
Seeing the sport there, it was a unique experience. And I think drag race, or the NHRA perhaps, needs to lean in maybe more to these events that does that make sense? Like, it was obviously there's a drag race going on. Everybody wants to see that, but there was so much going on. There's got
nothing
a concert
wrong with
going.
A smaller event or a trimmed
Small
down
market
event if it fits that market and fits that racetrack, which it does.
It fits it, and I
not
saw
watered
people,
down at all.
Not watered down at all. And you saw people having the time of their lives. I rode through the zoo Saturday afternoon. Brett Underwood and I were rolling through the zoo with Freddie Turza and VP Racing Fuel, some of those guys, and we're rolling through the zoo there, and we were kind of talking amongst ourselves. And to be honest, I almost found myself jealous of these people who are just willing to have a good time. right? You know, like willing to not care if they're tromping through the mud, willing to not care about what anybody thinks or what. I mean, I compare it to myself, and hell, most nights I got so many things on my mind, I can hardly go to sleep. I can't, let alone spend 2, 3, 4, 5 days partying with a bunch of people in Minnesota, right? The pressures of life get in your head. Yeah, JT, you know all
JT
about
really
it.
can relate to this.
Yeah, but it was literally going, man, just to see these people let loose and have a good time. It was a really, really, really incredible weekend. And I tell you what, guys, let's not waste any time. We got the man of the hour in the green room right now. Ladies and gentlemen, again, I may be Steve Torrance's biggest fan. I have decided to take it upon myself. I believe Steve Torrence is already a superstar, but I told our whole team earlier this week, I said, I'm going to do whatever it takes. This guy's going to be a household name because this is a clean-cut, well-spoken, badass son of a bitch from Texas, right? That climbs out of his car shooting shit, right? I mean, it's just an incredible thing. And I don't think he doesn't get his fair share. He does not get the respect he deserves. I post something about him on social media and people just can't wait to give him shit. And I am exhausted with it. This guy, we need him.
Man, we're getting wound up early today, JT.
We need him out here. I'm not wrong. There's no one out here that could, you don't want to argue with me about this. Ladies and gentlemen, without any further ado, before I knock this whole desk over, the one, the only, quadruple champ, Steve Torrence.
What's up, Wes? How are you, brother?
You can tell how I am. I'm good. I'm real good, bro.
Just jumping out, shooting shit.
Yeah, you do, man. And I just think about, we need so much more of this, man. So, hey, congratulations. I do not want to bore you with, how long, wow, how's it feel? I mean, obviously you were ready for that breakthrough moment there. But let's talk just more about, you know what? There's a couple things I want to touch on. You mentioned in your press conference, or excuse me, in the media center there at Lucas Oil, Brainerd International Raceway after the fact. And I jotted this down because I kind of found it interesting for someone who's done all that you have in the sport of drag racing. You mentioned that pedaling the car and having to be the difference maker in that moment or in that particular situation, kind of a little unusual for you. You normally are going to A to B every single time. And you mentioned how much it meant to you to have the opportunity to be the difference maker. Can you kind of take us through some of that and round after round of knowing that this thing's probably not going to make a full pull?
Yeah. So like first round, you go up there and you think, okay, well, I mean, the track's good. You watch Brittany go 64 hauling butt down through there. And so you're confident. Second round, the sun's out, the clouds are gone, the track's definitely changing quickly. There's 4 pair. I think we were third pair. We watched, I'm getting in the car, getting ready. I see Billy leave right in front of me and go out to smoke the tires. Brittany smokes the tires. Well, both of them were pedaling it down through there. And you mentally think, okay, that's what's about to happen to me. This is what I need to do. And that happens a lot. And you have that process of this is what I need to do. But rarely do I do that. Normally I go out there and slap the throttle over and over and over and smoke the tires and get to the end. And it's not something that you're really just that proud of. It takes so much patience to properly pedal the car. Let off the gas, let the thing stop spinning, come back to settled, get on the throttle, but slowly ease onto that throttle, roll into it. And we're talking an inch that you're moving, 1.5 inches maybe, from nothing to everything. And you're trying to roll onto the throttle while the car's shaking and holes are going out and it's pointing at one direction. And you're like, is this shit real? But yes. And so, like second round against Antron was one of my most proud accomplishments. And I didn't even really think about doing it. I saw Billy smoke the tires. I'd already ran the process through my head of how I wanted to do it. And the car smokes the tires instantly. I ease off the throttle. I feel like it just settles and I roll back into it and I'm gone. And I'm like, this shit just worked. And I really just did it. So I was super confident getting out. And admittedly, I've not been the best at that. I've smoked the tires a bunch and just rah. And it's the most difficult thing is when that car is beside you and you can hear them and you know that they're coming, or you don't know what they're doing, but you can't see them, but you can hear them, and any second they're going to blow by you. And so you're trying to get it going, but that patience is the one key that will make it happen.
And it's one of those, it's like a wartime experience. You're only going to have that experience when things go wrong, right? Because, I mean, a team prides itself, especially yours, in nothing going wrong, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
and I got way off in left field on that answer because, Richard Hogan has that car, and it goes A to B 90% of the time, except for this year. And we've been trying stuff, and we've smoked the tires a little bit, and so you don't get that experience. And if it happens in qualifying, you don't get that experience either, because you're not going to roll back onto the throttle and pedal it in qualifying and risk oiling the track down and screwing it up for everybody, or even blowing your stuff up. But race day, that thing goes down the track more often than not. And no matter how many times you go in there and you sit with your crew chief, or you sit with Lagana or whatever, and you say, okay, next time this happens, this is what I'm going to do. Well, it always happens, and you come back and go, yeah, I screwed that up.
Let's not do that again.
Yeah. That's not what you were supposed to do.
It's funny you mentioned that. I talked to this has been a hot minute ago, but I remember it was at the NHRA. There was a test session in, I believe it was maybe a couple weeks before the U.S. Nationals. Whatever. It was when Frank Manzo, still to this day, was tuning in for Mike Castellana, still is. But they were having some trouble getting the car to go. They were struggling. The NHRA had changed how they did some stuff with track prep. And Frank was trying to actually help Mike, who had spent his entire career racing a nitrous car, learn to pedal it. And they were putting a cone out on the track and getting him to make it there and whack it. You know what I mean? And it's like, you can't do that with a fuel car, because this thing's going to kick the blower off of it. Maybe you can't do that. So there's no way to practice or prepare other than having something go wrong and sinking or swimming.
And smoking the tires at the hit is so much different than if you smoke the tires at the 330, because then you can get off and right back on it, whether you catch it soon. If you cut it really early, you just slap the throttle. It's a different scenario, because you hit the gas, smoke the tires, clutch is 1-to-1, everything's spinning, the tires are going 300 miles an hour, and you're going 12. And you're like, okay, let's get this slowed down and geared back up. And it's difficult. And you don't want to be real good at it, because it means it happens a lot.
Exactly. I was just thinking, it's not something that you want to be too terribly proud of, because you don't want to be in that situation. But it was cool for me personally. I think a lot of times, and as you heard me ranting and raving a second ago, I think you're such a great ambassador for our sport. You've been a fantastic champion for our sport. And it's like, I was glad to see you be able to go out there and be the difference maker, because it's easy to sit back and go, hey, he's got the best parts and pieces in the world. He's got some of the best people on the planet Earth, a team that's been together through thick and thin for a long time, a lot of continuity, right? You don't see a lot of fresh faces inside that Capco boys group. This is the same old boys you've been rolling with for a minute. And it was nice to see you be the one that made the difference. And I'm glad that you got to have that experience. I mean, that was your 52nd win of your career.
Yeah.
You had to build a wing on there at the shop to house all these trophies. Let's see them. Why don't you, and you said this the other day, and I'm going to bounce all around because that's kind of what I do. But since you showed us that, why don't you tell us and explain a little bit why those aren't a trophy room in your house? Like, we talk to so many racers, and this is no shot at anybody, that build on a trophy room, or they've got like all these trophies in a display case in their living room or whatever. Why are all those trophies at the Capco office, in your office there?
Every one of these guys here, I'm trying to get my damn screen back to where it goes. Every one of the guys here at Capco are an integral part of what we do. Each one of these guys, from the bottom to the top, work their tail off every day to keep us out here and keep us racing. And it never fails. They know, I mean, whether they watch the race or they look on social or they look on Facebook, whatever it is, they know when we win and they know when we lose, and they're proud of it. We have a big digital sign out front that says 4-time world champion and all that. And so they take pride. They're proud of what we do. And so every trophy that we've won in Top Fuel is in my office except for one. And it's Seattle 2012, and I won in the final on a pedal fest. And that was just one that sticks out to me, and I kept that one at home. But I want every one of the guys here that work here to be able to come in and see it. And so they come in my office all the time. They're like, where's the new one? Where's the 10th trophy? And it means something to them because they support us. They keep us going. And there's guys that work here now that don't know the Steve Torrence that was in the field, but there's still a lot of them that do, that I worked in the crew, hands on with them. So it's something that they're proud of to say, hey, I worked with that guy in the field on the pipeline. Now he's in there helping run the business, and he's a professional world champion race car driver. And so, I mean, it's the same thing that you see anybody that you're friends with, that you know, and you've watched them come from when you were in school to wherever they're at now, and you take pride and you're proud of that person. And so all of these guys have rode that journey with me, and I want them to be proud of that as well and see what we can accomplish together.
It's so cool, and it's exciting because I think sometimes people get lost in thinking that like the only person that cares are the handful that are directly around you. You know what I mean? And that's not the case. I mean, it's got to feel good that all these people care to that level, right? That everybody that's involved in Capco from the business standpoint, I mean, I can't imagine the proud moment it is when one of them old boys roll in there and want to see the latest, greatest trophy. You know?
Yeah. And that's something that motivates me. You know, that the hardest part of this season has been coming back to the office on Monday morning and all these guys going, man, what the hell's going on? You've just won 51 races here and 4 championships. Why are we struggling? And it's not you. It's why are we struggling? Right. What's happened to us? Where are we at? So, yeah, it's you know, it's truly remarkable. Our race team is a family team. Our business is a family business, and we all live and die by the sword here, and have a good time doing it. It's tons of support and respect.
It's an amazing thing, and I appreciate you sharing that with us because I think it's something that folks genuinely need to hear. One of the things that you mentioned, and it's been a little bit of theme of 2022, it would seem. Obviously, we're in a wild world here. It's hard to get stuff, shipping issues. You probably heard me going on about air travel woes. I mean, it's a wild time, friend. We're hearing a lot of race teams talking about trying things. When a top fuel team that's won 4 world championships, as we've mentioned, 52 races, I'm just curious, like, what are we trying? What kind of things are you guys trying? Is it more in tune-up and application of power, getting in it, getting the clutch in earlier, or is it literally with hard parts, trying new parts and pieces?
What we're mainly have been trying is working on the tune-up, trying to get the car to run quicker, to run faster. I mean, we have opponents that are running 337 miles an hour. We're running 331, 332. So that's the difference. That ultimately is the difference of a 66 or a 62, just that speed. So, you can run the same ET and everything to half track and get outrun by 5 mile an hour and get outrun by 600s at the end. It's just, we need to get quicker. We need to get faster, but also people are trying just the general hard parts, material, aluminum, the iron that's in the clutch disc, all of the things that we use for most people that are not consumable items. For a top fuel car, they are. Clutch discs are just a dime a dozen. You got to get the ones that work, you run them in, but the material that they're using, the iron is different. Heads, cranks, all of these things, it's a struggle to get it in the first place, but then whether or not it's the same as what it's been being in the years past, just because the raw material that the manufacturers are using may not be exactly the same, even though they say it is and they think it is and whatever. It's coming from a different source. It's coming from a different country, wherever. So a lot of that stuff is different, and you're finding subtleties in all the things that we use, whether it's the strips in the blower, the aluminum for the rods, the metal for the cranks, the disc, whatever it may be. It's all some kind of deviation from what we've been running, and you struggle to kind of adjust to it. And I think a lot of the teams are having that same problem.
I read an article, and I appreciate the insight, because you hear that thrown around like we're kind of testing, we're trying some things out. And I think, the masses go, man, what could they possibly be testing? Because a lot of this stuff's highly refined, highly specialized, right? And I've heard a lot about clutch disc availability this year. Obviously, that's a big a big issue. One of the things I was curious about, I read an article on competitionplus.com earlier today. Maybe it was yesterday when I was trapped in Minneapolis. I can't remember. Anyways, one of Bobby's guys posted a story, and it was about it was the tire story. I don't know if you've seen this, but it was talking about Goodyear being comfortable with the tire going 340 miles an hour and this, that, and the other. But there was an interesting thing that Robert Height was quoted, and he said these Top Fuel dragsters are on the rev limiter at the 8th mile, and it just kind of floored me. Is that accurate, Steve?
It's very accurate. I mean, give or take 100 foot right there.
Really?
The rev limiter comes in at 2.75 seconds.
Wow.
So the rev limiter actually comes in before the 8th mile or before 660.
Yeah.
And so it's crazy when you run that hard. I mean, some of the cars in Brainerd were 298, 299 at half track. And that speed is the difference. That speed is what makes up that ET there at the end.
Yeah, because you can't run 338 or whatever if you're not running damn near 300 at the 8th, right?
Right. And think of how fast we would be going if we didn't have the rev limiter coming on. And when that thing hits, it's like throwing a miniature parachute out. You feel it. You hear it in the car. It's running so hard, and then it just lays over and planes out. But I don't know what else I don't know what else they could do. I mean, you're at the mercy of those tires. And
I don't know. There's an answer.
With that being said, I have been a victim of a tire failure. It's not a fun situation. It's like, hold on, whole shit's happening quick, and we're hitting stuff hard. And
Do you have any concerns as we encroach on that 3? I mean, there is some people I think that are speculating, perhaps in Funny Car, maybe in Top Fuel, that we may see that this fall. I mean, people don't realize that 338 to 340 is a big jump. It doesn't sound like a lot to the layperson, but that's not an easy feat. But as we get kind of into, we jokingly call it record setting season, get into September, October, November, we're probably going to see you guys in some really killer conditions. There's some great tracks coming up. Do you think that that's something that could be possible to happen in 2022? Two-part question. Do you think it's possible, and how do you feel about it?
I mean, I'm all for it. I'm the quicker, the faster. That's why I race. Yeah, we race as a family, but we race to win and go fast. If I didn't race Top Fuel, my dad and I would race something against each other if we had to race bicycles. Right. That's just, that's the competitive nature that we have. But it's a long ways from 338 to 340. But with that being said, Funny Cars have already been 339 with the headers laid back and all the stuff. Right. And they changed that because they were outrunning us. Right. And I think that happened at Brainerd a couple of years ago. So it's definitely something, a speed that is obtainable. Whether we need to do it on a regular basis, I don't know. I don't know. I haven't been keeping up a whole lot with the Funny Cars and actually what's going on there. But I do know that if anybody's going to do it, it's probably going to be Grubby. And Brittany's car. I mean, that thing is unbelievably quick and fast right now. And it didn't just happen overnight. Grubby's been running hard like that since he was with Milliken. And they went 62 or whatever it was with Milliken's car, and they've run it again with Brittany's car. And what he's doing is refining the process. He's getting better at harnessing that power and making it go when he needs it to. And that's why they've been so competitive this year. But 340 in 1,000 foot, people don't, you still have occasionally the diehard fan that wants quarter-mile race and this stuff sucks. Well, we would be over 345 in a quarter mile, 345, maybe 350. I don't know. That's so far beyond what we're doing now. We can never go back to that unless they cut
dramatically train. Yeah, it will take sweeping changes. I've tried to have that conversation because you're right, and we argue about it here a little bit on the show. That I do recognize and appreciate that perspective of the 1320, a quarter mile. That is drag racing's yardstick. That's the whether you grew up a drag racing fan or you just got into it when you're watching Vin Diesel talking about living life 10 seconds at a time on a quarter mile or whatever in Fast and the Furious, that is the number. But people it's not so much about how are you going to stop this son of a gun? And that's, I think people kind of fail to realize most of these tracks built in the 60s, they're landlocked. They've got a neighborhood popping up across the way that we can't just add 400 feet.
No. And you look back, the record in a quarter mile was 3:37. They've already outrun that. We've already beat that. So we made the decision to go to 1,000 foot to give us 320 feet more stopping distance.
Yes, sir.
You can't add 10 miles an hour to us and take away 320 feet and expect us to stop anywhere we go. Because some of these places, they're newer facilities. It's hard to stop. I explain this to a lot of people because a non-drag racing fan asks you, are those the long skinny ones with the little tires and the parachutes? Yes. Well, do you not have brakes? Yes, we have brakes and parachutes. And the reason is because you can't stop without them. If you do, you just did everything right.
Yeah.
And I pushed the parachutes. I pushed the button to deploy the parachutes, whether it's the button on the steering wheel or the lever, 200 feet before the finish line. And they will open 100 foot past. It takes a long time for that process to happen. So if you're late on the chutes at somewhere like Pomona, you may be in the sand.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you may be up on that golf course on the tee box, and so everything has to go right even now to get them shut down. And people don't really, when you're not sitting in it, you don't understand that. Richard Freeman is one of my buddies, and he comes over and he looks at these cars, or he looks at us warming up, and you know him really well, so there's a lot more colorful language involved. But he goes, "You're stupid. These things are stupid," because when you put 11,000 horsepower on a car that weighs 2,300 pounds, I mean, that's the ultimate rocket.
Literally. I mean, it's amazing, to be honest, as much hell and hard time as we were given for like, well, there was only 15 cars or there was only 20. Thank God there's not too many more of them. You know what I mean? Because I just don't know that they would be in the hands of people that need them, because this is a dangerous, dangerous deal. And it is no surprise to me at all that there is a limited number of Top Fuel dragsters on the planet Earth.
Yeah. And, there was a time when there was 23 cars at an event pretty consistently. I think I just did a media thing with NHRA talking about the U.S. Nationals, and there's 23 or 24 cars entered there. So we do need that. We do need some more cars. I think it would help our fan base and help, promote our sport. But it's so crazy expensive. There's so much logistically that you have to do to have that. And they're just, there's not a lot of people as stupid as all of us that want to climb in that. And sitting here watching this, there's tons of people that go, "Oh yeah, I would drive one." But then when you get in it, you're like, "This is a terrible idea." I clearly remember St. Louis, 2006, coming off of the year before I won the championship in alcohol dragster. I go there to get my license on Monday after the race. The first two passes, I step on the gas. It goes to 300 foot.
Whose car did you license in? Was it
J.R. Todd's car?
Okay.
And so this was a full race trim, ready to go Top Fuel car that had been winning races. And so step on the gas, it goes out there to 300 foot, smokes the tires. And in my mind, I've built this thing up to be a monster.
Right.
Well, those two runs gave me the little bit of latitude that I needed to realize, okay, it's not going to just kill me right now. It may take a little bit, but not yet. So I step on the gas the third time. It goes all the way to the end. And at this time, I went a 470 or something in quarter mile at 310 or 313. And I remember thinking from 300 foot to the finish line, oh shit. But it took that far for oh shit to come out because it was like a strain. And then I'm shutting the car down and I'm like, my heart's pounding and I'm like, I have literally let my alligator mouth overload my hummingbird butt because this is terrifying and I don't know if I want to get back in. And I had just gotten out of a 5-second, 280 mile an hour car. The transition from that to the fuel car blew my mind. And then, 5 minutes goes by and I'm like, okay, yeah, we got to do it again.
Let's do it again.
But just to hop into one of those things.
And like face the beast.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. No, I was thinking about this, and I get off and I'm watching the race in there on the starting line, and it was you and Brittany, because that was one of the things. The fact you beat every champion since 2013 this weekend. Everybody who's Antron, Brittany, Tony, and yourself. That's everybody who's won a championship since 2013, right? So that's a tough road to hoe, right? But I was watching you guys in the first round, and I just thought to myself, God, it's got to take some balls just to hit the throttle in the water. You know what I mean? Because, I step back. Like, I look at all these people piling around, and nitro makes me very nervous. Like, we've been in the media business for 16 years. I've been around drag racing my entire life, and I've just seen a lot go wrong. You know what I mean? Like, in places you wouldn't expect it, right? I think a lot of the casual fans go, oh, the bad stuff all happens down there by the scoreboards. Well, man, there's been plenty of bad stuff happen right behind that water, right? Or right there on the starting line. So I always kind of take about a dozen steps back, just out of appreciation for how horrific this stuff it really is. People don't understand. But anyways, are you at a point now after all this winning that it's just, you're kind of desensitized to what's going on in there? Because it does seem like it would take some significant intestinal fortitude just to hit that inch throw gas, the throttle.
Well, honestly, I feel that I'm in the safest place possible until you start going down the track. Because when that thing blows up, I have a titanium shield behind me, covering up my head, covering up everything, fireproof clothes. And you guys, everybody around, is not covered from the shrapnel that may come off of it when it explodes, because everything can go absolutely correct. But when you throw nitromethane in the mix, it kind of negates all of that. I am at a point in my career where I kind of mentioned this in my interview Sunday after the race. I've always been a Tony Schumacher fan for his driving ability and the ability to rise to the occasion when he has to. And early in my career, I questioned, how can he be 100 on the tree first round and 40 on the tree in the final and just get it done? And not saying I'm at that level, but I've found myself in the same situation where you may go up there first round and you have a car that you're confident that you if everything goes good and you do your job, don't screw up, and be 90 on the tree. And then the next round, you got somebody like Justin or Brittany or Antron or Tony that you got to bring your A game, and you go 50. So it's where you become comfortable in your situation, in your ability, in your car, in your team, and you do what you have to do at that time. And Tony has been in almost every situation. He's wrecked, he's blown up, he's flipped over, he's won championships, he's won shootouts. And the only thing that can make you be that way is being in those situations. And one of the biggest benefits that happened to me was losing the championship in 2017 and going through the emotion of leading all season, wrecking at Dallas, having to get mentally back in the game, and then losing the championship on the final day of the season, because ultimately I didn't get my head back in the game. I didn't fulfill my obligation to go up there and be on the tree and do my job to the best of my ability, because I dropped the ball on those guys, because we could have still won that championship had I not lost on a hole shot that round. And so going through the following season in 2018 and just building and developing that mental fortitude to handle whatever's thrown at you, whatever the situation is, you're going to have to buck up and do it and be on your A game, because that win's counting on you. That crew chief, those guys, that team, everybody is counting on you, because they put on all the work throughout the week and throughout that day to give you the opportunity to win the race for them.
What do you think? I've been like writing notes down because you're doing too good. I'm going to have to quit. But I've got a handful of things if you'll play along. I'm just curious. Tell us a bullshit with us a little bit. When was the worst or the toughest situation you think you've ever found yourself in as a driver where you knew I'm going to have to be the one that escalates here? You talk about Tony and guys like that are able to just get better, be the better one when they have to be the better one. When were you in your feels, in your head the most as a driver? The single run, a single round?
The defining moment for me would be 17. I think probably second round, maybe third round against Richie Crampton at the finals, having to win the race or having to win that round and keep going and not doing it, dropping the ball. Whether you want to admit it or not, when you wreck one of these things, when you've made hundreds, if not 1,000 laps in one of these and nothing goes wrong, it's all good.
Right.
But when something goes wrong, when that wreck happens, you're not scared because that's what we do. We willingly subject ourselves into that. But it's kind of like grabbing that electric fence when you're a kid. You know, that thing pulses. So you may grab it one time and it doesn't. But the first time it knocks the shit out of you, the next time you go to grab it, you're like, damn, that hurt. And you have apprehension. And you can't have that. When you're up there trying to go 45 on the tree and win by 2 thou because your cars are that even, you got to be 100% committed with no reservation about it and go do your job. And when you hit the wall going 320 and break the car in half, or 327 and the car breaks in half, and you felt the tire go down and then you don't remember hitting the wall, but you remember going at another wall with no steering wheel, you're like, shit, that hurt. And I don't want to do that again. And it's not that you're scared. It just runs through your head a little bit.
Because now you know.
Yeah, now you know. Now that fence shocked you and you're like, man, that sucked. I don't want that to happen again. So that was the moment. And that's when you either say, hey, I'm going to get my shit together and get back in this, or you just crawl in your little hole and go hide.
That might be your Texas showing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because, I mean, it's funny because I think, you know, having lived here for 3 years, it's funny you beat people and it really is a unique place, but you bump into people from down here and I'm fairly certain they could get their ass whipped in a bar and walk right back in to just give it another go. You know what I mean? Just, by God, this is what we do. And I'm going to go back in there and try her again. And it's cool to hear you talk about it. And I'm curious, that 2017 moment you talk about losing the championship, and I always enjoy opportunities to get drivers and get star level racers talking about other racers. Do you think that's a little bit of what we're seeing in that elite motor, that Erica Enders camp coming so close? Because you can see that they're racing this year in that pro stock category with a chip on their shoulders. They're going out there to stomp on people's throats. And I think, like you said, losing the championship at the last race of the year in this moment where they looked like they had it in the bag all year long, or looked like they could at least get it done, and then having it snatched away from them at the last moment, you can see that there's an entirely different attitude, starting with Erica. You know, you can see that she's racing with a little bit of a chip on her shoulder. Do you think that she's kind of experiencing what you experienced in 17?
100%. I've known Erica since we were 15 years old. We grew up, even before that, we grew up racing together. We raced Super Comp, Super Gas. We've done it all together. And so I know her very well. And at the end of the day, you just get tired of listening to people's shit, first and foremost. Everybody has an opinion and you know, everybody has something to say, and social media gives everybody some kind of voice and they want to be heard. But, you know, people talk crap about her. People are her fans, same as me. But when you know, when you're a 4-time champion, you did something right. You didn't just slip on a banana peel and get lucky and win a championship. Maybe one time, not 2, not 3, not 4. And she is one of the greatest pro stock drivers there's ever been. She goes out and dominates. She wins on hole shots. She kicks ass. And so to go through that season, to have such a dominant performance and not get it done, just motivates you even more. And then all the trash talk that all the other people are saying, instead of letting that affect you, you let that motivate you. I call them tears. And I say that Top Fuel car, that Capco Top Fuel car, is fueled by all the little people that get pissed off and cry, and we get all their tears, because the hater tears is what motivates me. And, you know, I'm not a different person. I just have learned to keep my mouth shut a little bit better, because people will form an opinion of you, or say this or say that. And she's the same way. She's probably a little more tactful in the way she says it than I am, and less abrasive. But she's not there to have a good time and just go race for fun. She's there to kick your ass, put your teeth down your throat, and win, and have a good time doing it and smile the whole way. And that's what we're all about.
I absolutely love it. And it has been an interesting thing, because you can see when racers have that, when the tide shifts or whatever, and there is a moment where their attitude and their kind of approach changes. They're not so happy-go-lucky. They're not just happy to be here. They're not just satisfied qualifying, because there are plenty of people. And, I think about Krista Baldwin. I was so happy for her this past weekend to run like they did.
Yeah.
And you know what it's like to be in that situation where making a good run is a victory. Dale Creasy, they go 397 in funny car or something, and you thought those guys
Won the
cancer.
world.
I mean, you literally did. They changed everything, and it was cool. And you recognize that, and you appreciate it. But you do get to a level where, hey, a career best isn't going to make my day. A good run in bad conditions is not going to make my season. We're here to win them all. So I appreciate that perspective. Last thing, and we'll let you go. Just a longtime supporter. I know it's been cool to see Redline. Redline Oil is a big supporter of ours, and I would just love I know that you have a great relationship with those guys. They've rallied around you. You have, being that you are a self-funded team, it's still got to feel good when you have companies like that are dying to support you and want to be associated with you.
Redline Oil and Torrance Racing have been together since 2011, when we started together. And at that point, it was cheaper for me to buy Redline than get free oil from anyone, because of the superior product that they have. We believe in Redline Oil. We've used Redline Oil. We've won championships with Redline Oil. And there's been plenty of opportunities to use other brands of oil. But that's where we stay, and that's where we've stuck. And they have held that loyalty to us as well. And as our relationship and partnership has grown and become more involved, those guys have stood behind us. And so I believe in that product. I know that it's the best. Mark Beatty is my biggest fan. He texts me. He wishes me happy birthday. He goes to bat for us anytime and always that I've ever needed him. I mean, he's just in our corner. And Team Redline Oil I would almost think they've won as many or more world championships than anybody.
I can't argue with that at all, man. And it's cool to be part of that club, because we take great pride in it. You know what I mean? Wearing their colors and flying their flags as a brand that's been around for so long, the 70s. And it's cool to see them supporting the people that our sport needs supported. Steve, thank you so much for the time. Your candor, you're probably one of my favorite people to have on here. I look forward to seeing you soon. I'll see you at the U.S. Nationals. Maybe we can break bread, go for a cocktail or something. You be careful. Enjoy your week off, and we'll talk to you soon, brother. Congrats.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. We'll see you guys in Indy.
Sounds like a plan, buddy. Well, guys, while we have a second, let's go ahead and remind everybody that the Wes Buck Show, each and every episode, is brought to you by way of our friends at Stroud Safety. Stroud Safety is known for their top quality racing safety equipment, from drag chutes and seatbelts to fire suits, gloves, and blankets, all 100% made in America. Log on to StroudSafety.com and make sure you tell them we sent you. Mike T., what an interview this Steve Torrence. I mean, I can't say it enough. Am I wrong?
Man,
I mean,
he was bringing
camera.
it. He was bringing it today. And I think we've seen Steve sort of grow into this role. And I think through the championships, and, you have to, when you're winning 4 championships, you have to be able to conduct a media session and give a good interview and everything. And to see him, he kind of was a little bit pulled back early in the season when they were struggling and, got on the defensive a little bit even. But now you could just see, I could see it today. Like, he might float up out of that chair because the weight's been lifted off of him by winning this race. And he thinks or knows that they have a hot rod going into Indy and into the countdown. And this is exactly what we thought we might see as the season goes on and as we get close to
He's fitting to remind everybody.
Record-setting
If he
season.
didn't,
Yeah.
you know, if he didn't, obviously, I mean, he had some things go his way. I think that final round obviously was a toss-up. I think both those cars were capable of making a good run. Ends up being a little bit of a tire smoke-a-thon. But
the Schumacher deal, that was a great segment there too, talking about comparing and contrasting himself to Tony Schumacher, but they are kind of in the same tier now, I guess you could say.
I think so,
yeah,
sure.
and he's 5-0 against Tony this year.
I got to tell you, man,
I know that's a big source of pride for him.
And we've got to roll on, but I got to tell this story briefly. The coolest thing, perhaps the coolest thing I saw happen, was not cool for the people that were involved in it. It was when Tony Schumacher and that Brainerd family racing team couldn't get that hot rod to fire up in the pits. I believe it was before the semifinals. They couldn't get the car to crank. I was actually there in Don Schumacher's hospitality area watching this all unfold. Phil Schuler, Todd Okahara, the whole team is over there. I'm drawing blank on his last name, Chuck. The whole group is over there scrambling around, and they can't get this thing to fire. Right? I mean, they had put a motor in it, I believe, kicked the bones out of one, put a motor in it. It's some sort of ignition problem. They couldn't ever get it cranked on nitro. They kept trying. They tried different starters. They were tracing wires, and they went ahead and bolted Tony in that bad boy, suited him up, helmet, ready to race, and rolled him out of the pits directly into the water box. And I remember thinking to myself, can you imagine the amount of confidence that would be required, the amount of self-belief that would be required specifically by Phil Schuler, Todd Okahara, and the people that were working on that thing to be willing to go up there? Because I heard Phil say, it'll start. That's what he said. He said, let's go. It'll start. And I just thought, I got goosebumps, man. Can you imagine that? Like
That's
going up there going, it'll start. The confidence it took to do that.
And for the driver to have the confidence to go, like,
it was
my
the
team's
moment.
got me.
I think it may have been
and
the moment.
And I have to do my job. Steve talked about that. We forget in drag racing. I think everyone has participated in drag racing that's a fan of it in some way. And what it takes to bring yourself when those lights flash to mash that gas on a top fuel dragster, especially like the first time you're ever doing it, what it takes to convince yourself that it's okay to do this, and then to continue to do it over and over for thousands of runs, like what Steve talked about, is something we take for granted.
I believe that's to be the case. I think that you get desensitized to it. You see people do it over and over and over, but it's in those moments where you see the look on these guys' faces, right? And you know that it's taken everything that they've got to roll up there and feel confident that they're going to be able to throw that little rocker switch, that little aluminum switch on that starter, and it's going to fire. And I just thought, what a moment. I hope those kids walk around with their chest puffed out for the next couple weeks. I get you're only as good as your last outing here in drag racing, but they've got a little bit of time between now and Indy that I hope that they're proud of being able to step up and make it happen in that moment. Even though the whole race didn't go their way, that is a season defining. That's a moment that team will build upon for years and years to come. So, hey, ladies and gentlemen, let's do one more script read here before we dive into the next segment of the show. We're running about 12 minutes behind. I apologize to everybody. Let me take a minute to remind you guys that the Wes Buck Show is brought to you by our friends at Redline Synthetic Oils. Redline has a reputation with racers and hardcore enthusiasts for creating products that perform and protect better than any other on the market, and they've been doing it since 1979. Whether it's your race car, your tow rig, your motorcycle, or your lawnmower, when you think about lubricants, you need to think about Redline. For more information, log on to redlineoil.com. Guys, I'm very excited about this one because honestly, we don't do enough for top alcohol racing. I think we've done our fair share for top alcohol dragster. I think about shining a light on the Julie Natasas and the Megan Myers and the Rachel Myers of the world.
Story over there is all the female
it's
domination
incredible
over there,
right? And there's Will Smith having success in top alcohol racing, and so many of our sports stars. We were just talking to Steve Torrence, 4-time world champion, who earned it, kind of paid his dues in top alcohol dragster racing. But I look at top alcohol funny car, and there's some of the baddest ass racers on the planet Earth, guys doing it for all the right reasons inside of that community. It may be smaller than it used to be, but there is some real deal drag racing going on. And if you want to see a good show, you listen to one of these guys swap feet, rack that thing up 6,000-7,000 RPM and roll in and light that bottom bulb.
You get that foot swap deal.
It's drag racing as men do it. I mean, I think that's really kind of, there's no other way. It's drag racing as men do.
And to your point, Shane, we know Shane. Shane's obviously Shane Westerfield is obviously well known in the Top Alcohol Funny Car ranks, 30 under 30 member a few years back, but I had never seen him on camera before. I just happened to be watching his interview with Joe.
Well, he's kind of a stud. He's got the flat bill deal,
well spoken. And I'm like, you know what, man, this guy's a great representation of Top Alcohol Funny Car and doing it at the highest level. So it's great to give guys like that a platform.
I feel really good about it. So let me roll through this real quick. The kind of year our next guest has had is the type of year that racers dream of. He's been to 8 events in 2022, has been in the final at every single one of them. He's won 3 national events in Pomona, Topeka, and Brainerd. He's won 3 divisional events, Phoenix, Denver, and Topeka. Ladies and gentlemen, the one, the only, as you said, Mike, a member of the Drag Illustrated 30 under 30. Let's give it up for Shane Westerfield, buddy. Rock and roll!
Quite a resume.
I mean, and we didn't even talk about anything else he's done. That's just like the last 6 months. Shane, congratulations on what has been an incredible season. We're very happy for you. I know it had to feel good to do it again in Brainerd. Take us through your weekend, man. I mean, you looked like a world beater, and it was a nasty field of cars up there. For what we lacked in quantity, man, we made up for in quality. I think the bump was like a 60-something. A lot of really fast cars. What do you make of Top Alcohol Funny Car and some of the performances that we saw this past weekend?
Yeah, it's been crazy. Every race you go to, like you just said, there's not so much of the the quantity. It's definitely quality. We were trying to figure out the spot of the ladder to be, for a buy run later on, and we were like, yeah, we'll get an easier first round. But you look at it, there is no easy first round. There is no easy second round anymore, and where it used to be 4 or 5 years ago. So you got to be on your A game at all times. But we had some setbacks to start the weekend out. We hurt some parts in Q1 and we didn't really find the issue before Q2. So we did a high gear shutoff run just to make sure we didn't hurt any parts. And then Q3 just had it real rich and pooched up, as they say, and got it down there. And then for first round against Gordon, it was like, game on, let's go. And tuned it up, and he had his tuned up, obviously, and got the win, but it was in spectacular fashion, as you guys saw.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I was going to ask you, that was one of the things I wanted to touch on, seeing something like that happen in front of you. And God, thank the good Lord, Doug Gordon. His daughters were actually a part of the Drag Illustrated 30 under 30 this year, or excuse me, late last year. I'm so glad that he was able to walk away from what was undoubtedly an extremely scary situation. When you see stuff like that unfold and you kind of think about, we were just talking to Steve Torrence about the severe consequences that exist out here, right? We do get desensitized to it. We do, at times, and I'm not, blaming you or anybody, but you can kind of become numb to that being a possibility, right? Is it hard to climb back in the car and rev that bad boy up when you've seen something like that just happen?
Yeah, no, it's tough, and I've been around, the drag car racing, obviously the boat racing thing a lot. And unfortunately the boats, you see that as well.
Yes.
And you can't put it behind you. You just need to do your best and focus and do your job, but in the back of your mind, knowing that it can happen and you need to be prepared for it, and your family needs to be prepared for it. But we got all the best safety gear you can have. And I was listening to Steve's interview at the end, like he said, the safest spot is probably inside the car as it is. We got all the right stuff around us and all the right safety equipment. So, but to watch Doug go through what he went through and to walk away, and I had a beer with him 20 minutes later, was absolutely incredible what he went through. And a couple bruises on the back of his legs, and he was good to go. And they're back home right now putting the new car together so they can come out and keep competing.
Yeah, it's an incredible thing. It's such an incredible group of people, because that level of commitment, I'm telling you, man, there are guys that are playing little league, or excuse me, I think about this. There are guys playing co-ed softball that get tagged with a pitch or get, slide in and bum their leg, you know what I mean? And they're done playing for the rest of their life. By God, I put my back out playing softball last week. I ain't never playing again, right? They're playing pickup basketball games at the YMCA, tear their ACL, never play again. Doug Gordon piles one of these things up at 250 miles an hour, and he's at home a day later building another car. This is a uniquely committed group of people, man, and I'm very thankful for it. Can you take us through Top Alcohol Funny Car? And I don't admit to I don't try to be an expert on this, but it does look like, as a class, as an eliminator, it's kind of in a weird place right now. We're seeing it's kind of spread out. There's some options, right? You got the Midwest Drag Racing Series offering a place for these guys to go race 8th mile. NHRA car counts have been a little funky. I mean, what's your kind of take on the state of the union as it relates to top alcohol funny car racing?
It just, it's money. It always starts with that, and a lot of what you've seen is guys that teamed up together, take two cars and put them into one. Owners have, one owner might leave, another driver might come in, and they're teaming up. It's kind of what Rick and I did a couple years ago, and so you're taking two cars making one. But it's coming back. NHRA's trying. They're gonna they're talking about this A-Fuel thing coming in, and there's converter cars out there now going fast. I'm sure as you guys saw, and it's going to be interesting. We did we had a meeting with Ned Wallister and a couple of other guys, NHRA officials, and they were talking about what we thought would be better for the class. And one of the things we brought up, like this particular race weekend, you could race in Bowling Green, Kentucky, you can race in Epping, New Hampshire, and you could race at Billings, Montana. There's 3 places you could be in one weekend. It's like there's only so many cars, and you're kind of like spreading this out thin. So we're trying to do, me and a couple other different teams, we're kind of on the same page as doing like what ProMod does, and just have us set for like a 10 to 12 race national event series. And that's what we go to. Less places for us to race, more cars will show up, and maybe work on the purse a little bit for us. And I think that'll bring some of it back. But I'll tell you what, if you try to order a new Camaro body right now, from what I was told a few weeks ago, there's I think 15 or 16 on back order right now for alcohol funny car bodies. So someone's buying bodies. People are coming.
Wow.
Getting ready to come out. So
that's good news,
sign.
right?
Yeah.
And that feels like good news. I mean, anytime I hear things like that, I think one of the best places to take the temperature of our sport is by ringing chassis builders' phones, right? You start calling up some of these guys and you hear about what they've got on order or how many cars they've got in the shop. You can get a real good look at kind of how it's doing, specifically certain types of classes. So that's some really valuable information. And I love that idea because I think top alcohol funny car, whether you look at it this past weekend or you look at it in, at some of these smaller venues, there is a significant entertainment value to this. I mean, the cars, like I said, the way, not all of them, obviously we've got a big influx of converter cars, but it's one of the few places you can still see heads up drag racing with cars equipped with clutches, guys swapping feet, not a lot of electronics on these things, manually shifted. It's a great representation. It's a great foot forward. I think if you're introducing someone to the sport of drag racing, top alcohol funny car is a hell of a show. And we are seeing the cars way more consistent than I think we've ever seen them, more complete runs than we've perhaps ever seen. And when we do see this influx of converter cars, I'm curious because in ProMod, we saw the inventory of cars grow rapidly on the back of converters because let's be honest, racing with the clutch is not for the faint of heart. Not only is it hard work, physically hard work, it's hard to be successful at, right? I mean, it is very, very difficult. It's kind of a ever-changing situation, right? And especially if you don't have a massive team, you may be making tuning calls. I know you work with Jimmy Rector. You're making tuning calls based on like projections of clutch wear, right? You know what I mean? So it's a tough thing. Do you think that this converter thing, I don't know how you feel about it like personally, but do you think that this influx of converter driven funny cars could ultimately help the class just because and I know I don't want to piss anybody off, but it is a little easier just as far, not easy. I mean, it's not easy to do. Obviously being successful with it is not easy. I mean, you see guys like Kyle Smith, what they're doing is different than just the local yokel guy with a funny car and a converter behind it. But do you think that that's something that could help the class?
Absolutely. It could totally help. And even the A-Fuel thing can help. Are the rest of the guys in the class that know how to swap feet and know how to halfway tune a car with the clutch excited about it? Absolutely not. Because like you were saying, it's a driver's class. You got to rev it up. You got to swap feet. And when you say swap feet, you got to be within 100 or 200 from one foot to the other foot each time and be consistent. And the front end's up and you got to shift it and get it down there. So it's a lot of work, makes it a lot of fun, makes it a challenge, and you feel really rewarded at the end of the weekend if you could pull it off and win a race by doing it that way. So by letting the automatics come in, it'll help the class 100%. It'll help the class. Am I excited? No, but it's all right. If it's good for the class, I'm all for it.
Yeah, 100%. I get it. I mean, what do you take? I was looking at the qualifying order. I think there were 10 cars there in Bradenton. As I mentioned, spread out from like bottom 50s to low 60s. Holy moly, right? I mean, this is not your dad's top alcohol funny car, right? I mean, is it exciting to see this class escalate like it has? I mean, I know there's obviously a downside to it, expense, right? The requirement as far as like testing and being prepared, but it is incredible the performances we've seen here lately, especially this past weekend in Brainerd. I mean, I was watching it going, this seems crazy that so many of these cars are so good.
Yeah, no, it's taken off the last 4 or 5 years, and it's almost like the secrets are almost out now, for guys that used to have the upper hand and would spend more money for more technology. That's kind of gone away now. We're all pretty much using the same parts. We've all got, different ways of reading racetracks or getting information from different fuel guys or even comp guys or pro stout guys, whatever it might be, how the racetrack is. So I don't know if we're smarter. I think it's all just, we all have the same information now. So I think that's why we've all kind of gotten tighter as a class as far as the competitiveness. And there's no, like I said earlier, there's no easy draw now. You got to be on your game from Q1 to round 4 every time.
Do you feel that from the NHRA as far as like, one of the things that we've heard from like kind of the new regime that has taken over at NHRA, you mentioned Ned Walliser and, Lonnie Grimm in the tech department and Connolly on the track team and Cromwell from a leadership perspective. It seems like we're seeing an NHRA that's way more, open to input, willing to change, maybe willing to listen. Are you experiencing that? And do you feel like they maybe more so now than in the past are appreciating what they have in the top alcohol ranks? Because I really look at it as those two categories could potentially be the most important things as far as the long-term future of our sport is concerned. Because as we've mentioned, so many stars of drag racing have come from top alcohol. I mean, the health and wellness of that particular style of racing, whether it's being able to kind of justify it financially, that's very important. So do you feel NHRA is kind of opening their eyes, maybe a little bit of a stretch, but do you feel like they're maybe appreciating that, the importance of this brand of drag racing more so now than in the past?
Yeah, absolutely. It really started that I started really paying attention, 21. Norm Grimes and Doug Gordon kind of had like committee going. Norm was the representation for Alcohol Dragster. I think Doug was for the funny cars, and lots of meetings going on in the back doors of trailers that I saw with Ned and Lonnie. These guys were all sitting there. So they were listening, and then they've done Zoom calls with all of us from the East Coast guys, the West Coast guys. And so they're talking, they're listening, which is the first that I've been doing this 10, 12 years now, whatever it is. And that's the first that I've really had them listen to what the racers have to say, not just what they think is best for the class. And I mean, alcohol was built for a stepping stone into nitro. There's no doubt about it. Some of the guys that have obviously been around the blown cars, the alcohol cars, they're there, they're set. That's their peak. That's what they want to be, though. They don't want to be racing fuel. And then you look at some of the A fuel guys, that is a definite easy stepping stone into a nitro car. And that's where you see guys like, Schumacher's, Colette, they're looking at the A fuel guys because it's the same starting line routine you got to go through. And, the Forces went through it, and, Proc did it, and, Torrence did it, a lot of those guys. So that's part of the reason why I think they want to bring the A-Fuel funny car in as well, another stepping stone, or it's an easier transition to go from an A-Fuel car to a top fuel car than it is from a blown car to a top fuel car, because all your habits are so bad for a blown car to go to a top fuel car. I've driven both the one weekend, and I had notes posted up on the dashboard what car I was in. Like brake lever was the same, but clutch pedal, you had to react different, and the fuel shutoff was different on one side compared to the fire bottles were different, the chutes were different, just completely opposite of how it was. And I don't recommend trying to do that. Pat Austin's the only one that can pull that off. He's probably one of the best. But I tried it. I was unsuccessful.
And it's almost as if, I pointed, if you consider pro modified, at least in the NHRA, a pro class, which we all know it's not technically, but if you consider that a professional level, and we're certainly seeing the investment getting to that of a professional level, but I think top alcohol funny car perhaps breeds the best pro modified drivers. You know what I mean? Just because there's a lot going on, you're kind of dealing with the claustrophobia of a body being lowered down over you. You're having to kind of beat. Obviously, you don't have rear suspension, and you're center steer versus left-hand drive. But as far as a gnarly beast, it's a great place. I mean, Stevie Jackson got his top alcohol funny car license. There's been a slew of these guys that kind of went to Frank Hawley's, went through that process and ended up being a very, very capable pro mod driver. So I think, to your point, man, those two categories just serve a very, very, very valuable, cannot be overstated role in our sports health. You mentioned a stepping stone. We've talked to plenty of drivers right here on this show and on the pages of the magazine over the years that are right where they want to be in alcohol racing. I'm going to put you on the spot. I mean, do you have aspirations of going fuel racing? Is that something? I mean, if the opportunity presented itself, I mean, obviously we know it's a big jump financially. It's a tough one. It's a tough road to hoe. But is that something that's on your radar, Shane?
It's always kind of been there.
Yeah.
You know, I have a lot of friends that run up in the fuel ranks, and where I'm at right now, I'm very fortunate. You know, I get to come back here, run the family business with my dad. We put motors together and put boats together, and I get to go to the river on the weekends. And, you know, we race 15, 16 races a year, where I had a sit-down meeting with Don Schumacher in 2013 to drive the Make-A-Wish car. And he told me he needed me 30 weekends a year and no extracurricular activities, you know, beyond racing for him. So first thing I brought up was racing my boat. He goes, absolutely not. I said, all right, I get you. You know, you're investing into me, and I understand that. So it's a tough question. I think if it was the right opportunity and
oh no,
you know, I'm very, very happy where I'm at now. I'll make that very clear. Some changes have happened in our program, and you may or may not know, Jimmy Rector's over with Bob McGosh now. So I've been tuning the car the last 3 races, and Rick's obviously getting better. And then Jim and Andy Whiteley are now a part of our program. So a lot of things are changing real quick, and I'm just happy that I'm right in the middle of it all.
I mean, I was actually digging through photos, and I got all in my feels seeing Jimmy, you know, behind your car. You know how he does. It's like my favorite. It's like perhaps my favorite pose in all of drag racing, doing the Jimmy Rector. And I was actually unaware until your Winner Circle interview that had happened. So I can't imagine how much that had to be a little validating for you to put it in the Winner Circle against Bob, who, you know, obviously just teamed up with Jimmy Rector. You've won a lot here in 2022, but was Brainerd especially sweet?
They're all fun, you know, and obviously going against Jimmy, that made it a little bit more sweet. But Jimmy and I, we're still good buddies. You know, he called me. He's one of the first ones to call me right after the race, say congratulations. So, you know, people are like, is it bad blood? Is it not good? Did he leave on bad terms? No, it's all good. It's all good. And who knows? We might race together later on in the future. I mean, for right now, we're going our path. He's going his path, and hopefully we get to meet up in a lot more final rounds.
Well, man, it's been great to chat with you, and I appreciate you being so gracious with your time. I'm sorry we were running a little bit behind there. I'm assuming you're headed to Indy, right?
Oh, yes, sir.
Next stop for you. How many more races? I mean, you talked about 15 or 16, so you're what, 8 in? I mean, will you guys run 8 more races? Or, I mean, what's the schedule look like for you guys for the rest of the year?
Kind of playing it by ear right now. We're going to get through Indy, and
you got a serious points lead.
Yeah, I mean, if we do well the next couple, then we may not have to go to more. But if we screw up, then you got to keep going, obviously. And it's kind of down to Belmer, and then if Gordon gets their car back together, and then probably DJ Cox. I think it's kind of between us 4 right now for who's going to be holding the big trophy at the end. But Rick's committed, and Jim's committed, and our whole team we're going for it. We're not going to hold anything back, so we're going to do our best. And I've never won Indy. A couple of the crew guys have. I was in the final last year with Doug. We both ran 49 with a 2. I was 002 red in the final.
Your lights, brother. I was looking at this 018 and E1 in Brainerd, 023. You were unopposed there in the third round, so we're going to throw that one out. You shut it off, planned early shut off. 030 in the final. That's pretty impressive, buddy. Like, especially swapping feet. You know, that is not something that we really see that frequently. Where's that come from?
Hunger. You want to do good. You want to do the best you possibly can. But all these guys now, Doug figured out the last couple of years how to cut lights. Beller's always cut lights. DJ Cox, all these, they're good. And then you bring in, I'll call them the button pushers, you know, the automatic cars. They're a guaranteed a 20 or better. So you got to be on your game at all times.
Guaranteed. It's so funny. Yeah. Now we're name calling them. Oh, we're going to have some people pissed off. I'm going to get some emails today. I can feel it. But no, it is interesting. And I see it from both sides, because I certainly appreciate, and people are real sensitive to it being called easy. And no drag racing is easy. I mean, you can go bracket racing and it's not easy. I mean, this is a brutal sport. Hell, unloading the car is too much for most, right? So I don't think you can really call any of it easy. but it is interesting how everybody's very sensitive about these things. You know what I mean? But it's a fun thing to kind of get people up in arms a little bit, man. But now we're so happy for your success, Shane. I think you're a great ambassador for the sport. That's why we had you in the Drag Illustrated 30 Under 30, man. We're genuinely happy for it, and we hope we get to do this a whole lot more, brother. I guess we'll see you in Indy in a few days.
Got it, man. Appreciate you guys having me on the show.
No problem, brother. Stay out of trouble. Thank you very much. Holy moly, man. What a show. I feel lucky that we get to do this, guys. I genuinely do. And I want to remind you that the Wes Buck Show is brought to you by FlowRacing.com. If you're a drag racer or a hardcore racing fan, you got to get on board with Flow Racing. Flow Racing provides unlimited access to drag racing's biggest events like Donald Long's Lights Out, No Mercy, and Sweet 16, every stop on the PDRA and NMCA tours, Funny Car Chaos, World Cup finals, the Streetcar Super Nationals in Las Vegas, and much, much more. The coolest part about this deal is that you can watch it anywhere, anytime, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. The platform provided by Flow Racing, in my opinion, truly is changing the sport of drag racing for the better. And there is no limit to the good these folks can do. So log on to flowracing.com right now and join the movement. Mike T, we're here at the, we've got enough time that I think I can rant and rave a little more, and we can talk shop a little bit, man.
Here we go.
Yeah, cut it off.
Rabbit holes open.
No, man.
Well, there's a lot of stuff we didn't get to talk about.
Well, let's talk about a little bit about these interviews we've had today on here. These have been fantastic. These might be two of the best interviews we've had on the show, period. It's so cool to see both of these guys sort of coming out of their shell. I mean, probably always have been, but really this is what it's about. And you have to be able to kind of to do this and do the media dance to kind of hit that next level. So it's been awesome. And I'm excited to see.
You know what I think of it? I think of it like this, and I'm not trying to obviously we're biased. We're very proud of what we do here. And I genuinely, truly believe that we are doing the Lord's work. Like, somebody's got to be talking about drag racing, right? But to Steve Torrance's point about pedaling the cars, most of these guys don't get the opportunity to talk on camera, right? I mean, the only time they do it is when they win a race, which we all know is few and far between, difficult to do unless you're Shane, Westerfield. But also, or if something bad happens, right? That was honestly part of the catalyst for Drag Illustrated.
We're not seeing highlights from Top Alcohol Funny Car on NHRA.com or on their social media unless Doug Gordon is going straight into the wall at 250.
Well, I mean, so it's true, man. I mean, it's
typical for all the non-nitro classes.
It's been going on for a long time, and it's really part of the origin story of Drag Illustrated is that you look at this industry and you go, unless you win all the time or wreck fairly frequently, one is really hard to do and one is something that you want to avoid. It's hard to get your name out there, right? It's hard to get an opportunity to get good at talking on camera. That's one of the things that I've been so excited about the NHRA introducing these Zoom press conferences. They did one today with a bunch of Top Fuel drivers.
They got one tomorrow, right?
They've got one tomorrow with the funny car drivers that are included in the Pet Boys All-Star Call-Out coming up at Indy.
Those are really
guys
good,
and gals, they are really good.
They're really good.
You need those opportunities. I mean, it's like Torrance was saying about pedaling the car. You can't get good at it if you don't have to do it sometimes. And these guys haven't really had an opportunity. And that's one of the things that I'm proud about with this show. I mean, it's fun for us to get on here and rant and rave and do what we do, but it's important to give these guys and gals an opportunity to do this and tell their story and let people hear how they sound, right? Hear how they, their storytelling chops get to be shown off a little bit. It's an important tool to just get everybody more and more and more comfortable with this, because how many times have we tried to line up a guest for this show and there's instant nerves. Like, I mean, these are guys that go 300 miles an hour, race cars.
They'd rather do that than
multiple times we've had people say, I don't know, man. I'm not really very good at that. I don't know. And it's like, no, you got to do it. Right?
Well, it's the opportunities come along more often now between doing it on your own social media, on a show like this, all the different platforms. But like, how we saw Shane this past weekend on the NHRA TV post-race deal that they kind of do for the sportsman guys before the pro final round. That's a great opportunity to see a lot of the emotion and personality of these guys that aren't going to be able to show that anywhere else.
I agree, man, and I'm glad that there are. I was watching Joe Costello's interview with Ricky Smith earlier today on WFO Radio. I saw Joe this past weekend in Brainerd, and gave him. I just think he does a great job.
He
I just
does.
really do.
He does. He's a great guy.
He is a
Yep.
great guy.
Yep.
But he does a fantastic job. And man, Ricky Smith is one of the guys in our space that can be a little hard to handle in a media setting, right? He can take over the conversation. He can take it. He's good. He's very, as good as he is at drag racing, he's very good at navigating those interviews and saying what he, getting his point across despite your best efforts to steer him a different direction. And Joe did an incredible job. And I look at it and I go, man, I'm genuinely appreciative that these guys have so many places. Like I thought about getting Ricky on here today, but I was glad that he got to tell that story. And there needs to be multiple voices, right? I mean, we need there to be multiple people telling these stories. So now it's a really interesting time, man.
One last thing about Shane Westerfield, JT, you need to hit him up. His family produces trade show booths and trade show.
I need to hit him up.
We need a new booth for PRI. We're trying to upgrade our booth. So let's hit him up. Now we've had him on the show.
And I'm gonna hit Steve up for one of those Capco flat bills.
There you go.
I'll get you one. We'll get one in Indy. We'll go see him in Indy.
Team Camo with the flat bills today, you and Steve.
My favorite Capco camo is the one that's like blaze orange. The lettering is blaze orange, but the hat's camo. I think that's a
you might see that one
look
somewhere soon.
You may see that one somewhere soon. All right, guys. Well, so hey, it's 3:26 in the afternoon. I don't have anything better to do, and my favorite thing to do is talk about drag racing. So let's touch on a little bit. I mean, we've got to be the only people in the media space that haven't been talking about the NHRA Pro Mod division and all the excitement that took place this past weekend at Brainerd International Raceway. Let's throw it to the audience here. If anybody's got any questions, I know that I've been getting asked a lot, to be honest with you guys, about the NHRA Pro Mod shootout. The last 72 hours or so, it's been one call or text after another relating to that particular situation.
Well, I mean, here's the question probably that people want asked, let's get your opinion on Ricky Smith dropping out of the shootout. I mean,
man, you know what? I tell you what, I listened to everything that Ricky has said, and I think that he makes a great point. I mean, I listened to, and I took notes. I listened to everything Ricky said today on the Joe Costello podcast. And I think Ricky Smith makes a lot of good points. For those that don't know, basically what happened over the weekend is this has been promoted for quite a while. The NHRA Pro Mod group, I can't really say enough about this group of guys. Eric Dillard, I'm trying to think of everybody else that's been like really. Justin Elks, our dear friend there in Mooresville, North Carolina at Modern Racing. There's been a slew of people, Doug Winters, all these guys rallying together to try to get Pro Mod, kind of protect pro modified drag racing, right? And keep this deal going specifically within the NHRA. So there's been a lot of effort to raise money this year, and one of those efforts resulted in the first ever NHRA Pro Mod, the D-Wagon NHRA Pro Mod shootout that was scheduled to take place this past weekend at the Lucas Oil Nationals. One of our favorite things, right? A race within a race. You know what I mean? I love any opportunity. I love it for the fans. I love it. I grew up as one of the kids going to the races with my dad. When we would go to an NHRA national event to watch, we would go on Friday and Saturday because you want to see all the cars, right? But it did feel a touch inconsequential, right? You know what I mean? Like you want to see some consequence. You want to see somebody win and somebody lose, and Qualify doesn't really provide that. So whenever we see these races within a race, whether it's the Big Bud shootout, the Winston shootout, the No Bull, all these various iterations of it, the most recent here being the Pep Boys All-Star Call-Out for Top Fuel and Funny Car, I was thrilled to see the NHRA Pro Mod guys put together this shootout with D-Wagon, support from Doug Winter's longtime sponsor, Gary Steinar, the whole group there, put up $25,000 and paid back $10,000 to win round money, which is very rarely the case with these shootouts. Most of the time, they're winner take all or a winner and runner up type of purse. It was really well done, and it was done primarily, and I don't mean to talk out of turn, but I think it was really trying to encourage participation. The NHRA Pro Mod Series has kind of ventured outside of their comfort zone the last few years. We've seen those cars roll through the gates at Bandimere Speedway in Denver, Colorado, the aforementioned Brainerd International Raceway in Minnesota, which is, it's a long haul for a lot of these guys. And the effort that Doug Winters and company put forth to encourage participation, that's really what it was about. Not only was it a great opportunity for the racers to make some extra money, what have you, it felt like it was primarily done to encourage participation throughout the year and bring people to Brainerd. That's a tough
and
haul.
That's their home area for
Yes.
Doug's sponsor as well. That's why
So
it was
a very well organized deal, and I think they did a great job of promoting it. They were, I worked with Doug. Doug, I mean, what can you say about some of these racers that are willing to burn up their time on the phone, ringing my phone, ringing other people in the media's phone, trying to help drum up interest and excitement in this event. It's crazy because very few sports have participants that are so willing to carry water like that, right? I mean, they don't think it's their responsibility.
Yep.
And to be honest, I'm going to make that point momentarily because I don't believe it is. But nonetheless, for those that don't know what's going on, there were 12 cars entered into the D-Wagon shootout. Upon arrival, there was actually, I was slightly salty about it initially because I'd spent like 2 hours working on a promotional graphic that had all the scheduled matchups. I mean, Doug Winters versus Ricky Smith, and Sidney Frigo versus whoever, and Chris Foran versus whoever, and Justin Bond versus whoever, and Belushi versus whoever, and Stevie. It was a cool deal. And I do, well, I mean, before I start sharing my opinion, let's just explain what happened. So upon arrival at the race, D-Wagon, the owner of D-Wagon, decides, hey, we could level up the interest and excitement. There's not 70 people here. There's 12 of us. If you guys are willing to forego the elimination ladder that we have established and do a chip draw, right? Kind of Street Outlaws, No Prep Kings, World Series of Pro Mod style, right?
Yeah,
one of our old
World Door Slammer Nationals.
World Door Slammer Nationals.
Which those guys were there at World Door Slammer Nationals.
Absolutely.
I think they had a fantastic time.
I'm hoping that was part of the what's the word? The catalyst for that maybe is leaning back to how cool that was down in Orlando the last couple of years. But anyways, and he presents an opportunity. Let's draw names out of a hat and see who's who. And if you guys are willing to do that, I'll throw a little bit extra in the kitty. I'll put 10 grand on top of the 25 grand. So a $25,000 shootout goes to $35,000. Really, really cool deal. Well, unfortunately,
and a D-Wagon, right?
And a D-Wagon, which for those that don't know is like a
$7,000 or something like that.
Additional trailer that adds additional seating onto the back of a golf cart, easily towed by a trailer, nice looking. You can make them color coordinated and match your golf cart. So the majority of people, 11 of the 12 racers on the property, were excited about this, right? Hey, why not? What the hell? Unfortunately, Ricky Smith, and there's layers to this, right? I wasn't there. I was there right after it happened, and I kind of gotten varying reports on it. And I really think it doesn't matter. There was 12 drivers involved in this deal. 11 of them wanted to do it. One didn't. One being Ricky Smith, and he wasn't there. He was out of pocket, dealing with personal issues whenever this meeting happened. I don't think this was some sort of organized or planned thing. It was just one of those things, a spur of the moment deal. And the decision was ultimately made to forge forward with the chip draw, and Ricky Smith, legendary 3-time NHRA Pro Mod world champion, arguably one of the best to ever do it, stuck to his guns and said, I'm not going to participate. So he withdrew from competition in this deal. And it has been the talk of town.
And that happened because Ricky, I believe, is number 2, right? Going into this, he was the number 2 seed. So he believed he had earned the right to compete against a lower ladder car in the shootout, and that doing a chip draw erased what he had worked for throughout the year. I think that was his stance.
Yeah, I think so too. And to be honest, a lot of Ricky's points of contention on this deal. Hey man, I'll tell you, Ricky's perspective on this, and this, I literally just listened to this and I wrote it down. He felt, I'm going to kind of blow through these. He felt there was a dangerous precedent being set that the format of an event could change the day of.
I think that's the biggest issue with it, is that it was the day of. And I think a week, 2 weeks in advance, it'd have been a whole different story. I think even Ricky probably would have been on board with that. But the day
he
of
says
thing,
he would have been against
it.
He said if it would have been done like at least a week prior, that he could have perhaps wrapped his head around it. However, I mean, and the other point that he made is anytime that there's a split, like you hear all the time about, we've had people try, split at our races. It happens at virtually every big money bracket race. That is something that not everybody involved has to agree on. If you get down to 4 cars and you're going to split the purse in the semis, everybody has to agree. Not 2 of the 4, not 3 of the 4. It has to be a unanimous decision.
That's why it's hard to get that done, but it happens more often in the finals because it's down to just 2 people.
Because you're down to 2 people, and it's easier, just like anything in life, it's easier to get 2 people on the same page than it is 4, 5, 6, whatever the case may be. So to be honest, And I know there's comments here calling Ricky a crybaby and all this stuff. And I know that he's kind of taken a beating online, but I do appreciate his perspective. I really do.
And if you know Ricky, none of this should surprise you at all, because that's Ricky. He's calculated, and he's not going to stand for anything that he feels like is working against him. He when he sets out with a combination and a car and a tune-up and a schedule to go race, like, the man knows exactly. He's got in his head what he thinks he can accomplish that season, and any deviation from that is gonna set him off.
Right. I mean, I wasn't at all surprised to hear that Ricky was the one that was upset, and, to be honest, I do think the guy, all those points are valid. Right.
They are, but you also want more money, right?
Yeah,
and you
absolutely.
Want more money, and you want to put on a show for the fans. And there was a meeting, and, all but one agreed to it. So, I mean, so there's two sides to it.
And that is definitely the part, anytime we talk about this, where we're looking a gift horse in the mouth, and you got a guy who is throwing money at the pro mod class for no other reason than he loves it, and he's gotten involved with it through Doug Winters and wants to continue doing so. And kind of, this is the response you get, or the controversy that you get. But at the same time, I think Ricky's goal, like you said, JT, his goal is to win a championship. I mean, we've heard now that this may be his last year. He said in the interview, this may have been his last race win. I kind of doubt that.
I doubt that as well.
As we go into the end of the year and get close to the championship, but he's on a different path than I think everyone else is.
Here's where I'll tell you guys. Here's the bottom line.
I'll bet $100 he does not retire.
That's not. I'm not taking.
I don't want to take.
I don't want to take him retire before, right?
He even said,
we have seen him retire.
said, I wanted to win one more race before I retire again.
It was like my favorite line of 2022 so far.
Pretty good.
But here's the bottom line on it. And this is, everybody can write this down because it is a fact and it's going to matter in life. Context matters. Okay. Context matters. And I can completely support Ricky's perspective on this. I really can. I get it. But context matters. And the context of this particular situation is we've got a category of drag racing that is in dire straits, right? We've got a category of drag racing that is badly in need of participation. We've got a category of drag racing that is badly in need of excited sponsors, willing participants. And so that context matters. In the context of that moment, when you have a sponsor who's willing, anybody who takes that situation lightly has never wrote one of those checks. I've paid out $1 million. No, roughly $580,000. I paid over $500,000. I've written $580,000 worth of checks.
That's one thing in drag racing that you've done that Ricky's never done.
And people don't understand the significance of having to be the one that strokes that check, right? I've been the guy at the end of the night that has to pay out money I have, right, to this group of racers. And when you have someone like that that's willing to throw money in the hat, I'm not saying it is lock, stock, and barrel, you do whatever he says, but within reason, you play ball. Because if I'm that guy, I am a mad son of a bitch this week because it has kind of worked out in their favor.
You? Yeah, are you? Because look at what we're doing right now. It has worked out in his favor. But
in that moment, in those moments are what's hard to get over, right? I mean, I've had various moments where in that moment, what happens matters.
But when cooler heads prevail, at the end, I think it's probably all good. Like you said, because of the upshot from all of this.
But I'm saying if you go back into that moment when it's happening, if I'm the sponsor that's having to contend with all this, if I'm the sponsor that's having my name dragged through the mud, if I'm the sponsor that's having this opened the door. The big issue I have with this is that there was an article printed on Competition Plus that was, in my opinion, a one-sided perspective on it. And I get it. It's happening. Everybody loves to get clicks and draw traffic and whatnot. So I understand the game better than most. But the difficulty is that when you start calling people's integrity into question, because that was really the underlying message, was that this was being done, right? This decision was being made to, in my opinion, or basically what was being said. I mean, and it was being said that there was an effort to manipulate the ladder, that there were cars that didn't want to race each other, that were scheduled to race each other. So the best thing to do was to draw chips out of the hat and make it a chance-based deal. And there was some commentary that insinuated that this was manipulation. Those things are very difficult to come back from. And those of us that hold ourselves to, to high moral standards and pride ourselves on doing the right thing and being good guys, that stuff's hard to swallow. You know what I mean? And so that was my kind of perspective on it. It was
pretty ironic too, that Ricky was supposed to run Doug, I believe,
in the first round,
just done the ladder, but they ended up racing each other in the finals of the actual race of the national event.
There's a lot of problems because there's layers to this onion, and I think it's worth discussing because and I want to reiterate this because I like Ricky Smith, and I know that I have argued for the better part of 15 years that he is the greatest door slammer drag racer of all time. He's one of my personal racing heroes. He's somebody that I think the way his longevity, it's what he's done, various combinations. It's incredible what he's done in the sport of drag racing. And I'm a huge fan of his, and I truly respect and appreciate his perspective. I do think the context of that situation matters. I wonder if the outcome would have been different had, there been a meeting that Ricky was included in. I doubt it. I think
that's where honest. That might have gone.
I doubt it. And I doubt. We don't know. I doubt that would have made a difference. But nonetheless, the real issue, and this, you guys hear me talk about this all the time, is who's holding the bag, man. The NHRA Pro Mod Series, what they're struggling from right now is a lack of leadership. There is no one. Had there been a Danny Rowe, someone who was running the deal, who's the well-known and established leader of the group, right? He's the leader of the group. He's at all the races. He signs the checks. His name. He's the organizing member of the LLC. He's the man. There was no question during the Real Pro Mod Association's existence where the buck stopped, right? Danny made the decision. And I think that's what the series is really lacking right now is clear-cut leadership. Sure, there are pockets of people that are contributing, but in my opinion, had there been a representative of the Pro Mod group there, me personally, I would have said if my sponsor would have came to me and said, hey, let's shake things up, and do this. I think a well-trained leader or a good salesman, to be honest, would have said, hey, buddy, I love that idea, but we're going to stir up a bunch of shit. Let's leave it alone and let's do that next year and try to, I think there would have been a way. And I guarantee you some of the people that I've mentioned, Steve Matusik, there's some other guys in the past. What was Matt's name that used to run the Pro Mod series whenever his last name, Matt Brammer? Do you remember him?
Yeah.
I mean, there has to be somebody. Yeah, that was in like the early iterations of the Pro Mod series. There has to be a leader. And I think that's what the Pro Mod division needs almost right now the most.
A neutral third party. Because a little bit of what you got going on here is the inmates running the asylum.
That's exactly what it is. And I got to tell you, I really don't. The NHRA, I think there may have been an article drop on Comp Plus or somewhere else today. I heard it last night. But there are some people. I think the NHRA is getting wrongfully thrown under the bus on this deal because, by all accounts, I mean, this is a rental.
I think they're hands off on that.
They are hands off.
They were just like, you guys do whatever.
Yeah, I mean, what do they care? They got bigger fish to fry.
Yeah, it's not going to affect like the rest of the NHRA classes or how they do things in the future.
No, and I think that's a stretch, and I do think that, I mean, I understand that there's some, there are guys out here that do it for a living, point to Ricky Smith, point at Stevie Jackson. There are professional racers out here, but I also think sometimes we have to take a step back and recognize that, man, we're not splitting atoms. We're not curing cancer. We're drag racing guys. And
but to these guys, man, that's what it's all about. And you said, context matters. I think you have to put yourself, if you want to understand Ricky's position, you have to understand
this is life and death to him.
Well, it is.
Whether it is or not, that's how he sees it.
He's not. Let's say that he's retiring. He's not going to be back next year, and he's out to win a championship for Ricky Smith this year. He doesn't care if Pro Mod doesn't exist next year if he's retired, because it's all about right now. So when you get to the point of the career that he's in, where you're at your last year or very close to it, the future health of the sport, especially when you're a cutthroat competitor like Ricky Smith, that's secondary. He's going to win. I mean,
that's a great perspective.
Ricky will go. Ricky will do whatever it takes and whatever he can within his power to win.
And that's a great perspective. And that's what I think. That's probably where this stuff gets lost. And that's why in that moment, I think it would have been worthwhile. But had there been I'm not, Doug Winters was doing all that he could possibly do.
Ricky may
but
be
he's
the only
trying
one
to run a drag
position.
race.
Well, Ricky is, if you put that same qualification on everybody else, Ricky may be the only one that doesn't return next year. all the rest of these guys, we hope and could assume that they're in the middle or early part of their career. Ricky's the only one in that position where this may be his last year.
It's just like
though, when you get that many people together, and as you know, as a majority have made a decision for all of you, and you weren't available to make that meeting or whatever, there's a lot of times where you do kind of bite the bullet on, not just in racing, but in multiple things in your life.
I missed it. I didn't get to vote.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, it happens all the time.
Right. And sometimes you go, okay, well, everybody went along with it. Do I agree? No, but I'm going to go ahead and go along with everybody else.
I really wish that would have been the case. I do think, to your point earlier, Mike, that it probably worked out. It came out in the wash, right? Because I don't know that there's no chance that there would have been this much conversation around the D-Wagon shootout without this. And this is a great reminder of when controversy can be a difference maker.
And then you got Doug going to the finals. I believe his first ever final. Am I correct?
Yeah.
At his sponsors race, where they're sponsoring this shootout. And what a story that is. So Pro Mod really delivered this weekend.
I think so too, man. With 12 cars on the property or whatever, they still managed to put on one hell of a show. I mean, the opening round of competition was fantastic. The racing all weekend was fantastic. And I mean, that final between Doug, I mean, it was poetry in motion, man. I mean, seeing Doug Winters there in the final round against Ricky Smith was incredible. Great for Doug. I mean, I think Doug Winters may be like an unsung hero of all of Pro Modified. You know what I mean? He has done a lot for this particular category, and he's done it in the face of adversity, right? I mean, that's a team that struggled. They've changed, things with the, changed engine builders at one point. I think they changed supercharger manufacturers at one point. I mean, he's worked really hard, and I think that Doug deserves a lot of credit for raising this money and putting this whole deal together. And I was really hoping that he'd have got that deal done, man.
We've got Doug's wife, Erin, sort of giving us some insight here in the comments that Ricky, he was against the chip draw even before the meeting. I think he had heard what the meeting was going to be about. And so it wasn't even, he's actually Chad Hester, his longtime crew chief, was there representing Ricky at the meeting. So he was against it no matter what.
Yeah, and so now that we know that, I think that it was rooted in the fact that it was too short a notice. And I mean, hey man, I was saying that
definitely was the only issue I think I have with doing it. Is if you'd have done it 2 weeks or from the start.
But this is a classic case. It really is, of the inmates running the asylum. I mean, there has to be somebody that's the leader. There has to be someone that's managing the effort, right? And Kevin Stevenson's actually making a great comment here that Lyle Barnett was doing his damnedest all week to hype up the shootout.
And that was awesome.
It was awesome, but dude, it's problematic. Nobody wants to hear me say this, but it's true. It's not the racer's responsibility to promote the race. It's not. It's their responsibility to race.
No,
it should be. It's great when they do. No, it's great when they do. But there has to be a circus master. There's no Hulk Hogan and no Vince McMahon, or excuse me, no Andre the Giant without Vince McMahon. And that's what that deal, I feel it's unreasonable. Lyle Barnett and J.R. Gray and everybody that was participating in the promotion of this race, that should be the icing on the cake. That should be, hey, you've got some guys that are willing participants, right? Look at Donald Long. Donald Long in the radial space is a fantastic promoter. He keeps the pot stirred up, and it was great when he had Stevie Jackson, right? When he had Mark Mickey, when he had Keith Barry, right? He had willing participants.
And that's when radio racing and Radio versus World was so popular, when these guys were going back and forth on the internet all day long, and it's great. Was hilarious, man.
But Donald was at the center of that. He was keeping it stirred up, and I don't think it's a reasonable expectation to say, okay, we don't need that. We don't need the Donald Longs. We just need some racers to post memes on the internet. No, the social media has made a lot of people very lazy, specifically in the promotional game. People don't promote the way you're supposed to promote. Like, you don't see people going and doing media tours. You don't see people showing up with posters at gas stations and handing out tickets and going to hospitals and going to auto repair shops and going to auto parts stores and car dealerships, going to be a part of our community. You have to go do that stuff. It's not a meme on Facebook ain't gonna move the needle. It may help.
It's that feedback
can't
loop,
be the
though,
tip of the spear.
All your people, you feel like everyone's seeing that, and you get the comments and the feedback like everyone that you wanted to reach saw it. That's the perception that I think that social media has given all of us, but you don't realize how small of an audience you're actually reaching. And you have the only way to reach all those other audiences is all these other
hardcore promotion, going out, being a part of the part of the community.
We hear that at the magazine, don't we? That I'm just gonna I'm just going to promote on social. Just do social only.
Let me know how that works out for you. Right.
Right. And on the business page, and they're like, no, I put that on my page. Like, what? Yeah.
Right. And
like,
and what's
like
even
two
worse
people
is
saw
about
it,
98 or 9% of businesses do a horrible job with their social media. Right. I mean, so it's not even like they're not even doing it well, and I guess I just am frustrated a little bit because if the NHRA has any blame, it's that they have this group of people. If they have to accept responsibility for anything, in my opinion, it's that they have this incredible group of racers. They have this incredible community of people that are painfully dedicated to the success of this deal, oftentimes at the detriment of their own bank account, their own racing program, right? I mean, they've got racers that are raising money, racers that are organizing sponsorships, racers that are organizing hospitality. And I think that who's responsible for it, in my opinion, I mean, NHRA needs to put someone in place, whether it's a series administrator or work with them, work with the Pro Mod group to put someone in place that can be the liaison, that can be the one that organizes these things, that can help promote the series. Because just expecting the racers to do it, because I can tell what happened. You can see what happened. Hey, there's probably a group text or a WhatsApp group. Hey, we need to drum up some interest in this thing, and we need to make sure. So Lyle Barnett takes it upon himself, and J.R. Gray is happy to talk a little shit, So these guys take it upon themselves. I personally think that's an unrealistic expectation to put on your racers. These guys got enough to do. Most of them have a business to run. Then they've got to show up at the track. I mean, we heard, there's just a lot of work, right? And so now not only do I got to spend my own money to come out to the races, spend $3,000 on diesel fuel, driving across the country or whatever. Now, right, they want me to promote the race too. Well, I don't even know if my car's going to start, and you're wanting to know if I posted a flyer on social. It's a completely unreasonable expectation, and I really feel that it's the root of the problem. I don't think that, this shootout aside, in life, every life difference-making movement, there has been someone leading the charge. And what's cool is there is an infinite number of examples, but a whole bunch of them right here in drag racing. Drag radial racing never would have been. Would it have gotten popular? Maybe, right? But it never would have been what it is today without Donald Long. He was waving the flag. He was the guy leading the charge. He was shouting at the rooftops. No matter whether you love the guy, hate the guy, or somewhere in between, the fact remains there was someone leading the charge. I look at nostalgia funny car racing and kind of like outlaw funny car racing. Chris Graves, the success of the Funny Car Chaos group is due entirely to that man. Of course, he needs participants. He needs track partners, right? But there's someone leading the charge. Keith Haney in the Midwest Drag Racing Series, same situation. There's someone flying that flag. He also has Ellen Eschenbacher. It's a little bit of a two-part team. They are screaming from the mountaintops that their deal's the best. They take care of their racers. I mean, look no further than, pro modified racing at its height. Pro mod was never healthier than when you had a couple of guys, Danny Rowe, Steve Matusik, and a handful of others waving the flag, right, for pro modified racing. Look at Pro Stock, Richard Freeman, right? Someone screaming and yelling, here's what we need to do. Here's how we're going to do it. Let's take some chances. Let's roll the dice. Look at Christianity. You guys love when I do this. Jesus Christ. Right? You know what I mean? But listen, affirmative action, but Martin Luther King, technology, Steve Jobs, right? Nazism, Adolf Hitler. There's always someone driving the bus. And if you don't have that, you've got a real problem. Wally Parks in the NHRA, right? Tommy Franklin and Tyler Crossnow with the PDRA, Steve Walcott, right? Steve Walcott with the NMCA,
Kenny
Raleigh
Nowling
Miller,
with ADRL.
Kenny Nowling in the ADRL. Every successful thing that's happened in the history of drag racing has had one
Sam Corcus
person.
For no prep.
Sam Corcus, they've had one person waving the flag, going crazy. They live and die for it. And that's what NHRA Pro Mod does not have right now. And you wouldn't have shit like what happened this past weekend if there was someone in that position. We've got a great car. It's real fast, but nobody's driving the thing. And somebody's got to step up and put hands at 10 and 2 and say, I'm going to take ownership over this particular pocket of racing, right? And drive it, decide where we're going, decide how we're going to get
somebody
there.
That's not racing.
Yes, because it's very difficult, right? Yeah. I think that, honestly, I don't mean to talk for Danny Rowe, but I think running the Real Pro Mod organization made him stop racing. He probably wouldn't admit that, and he probably wouldn't say that. But I know that it took a lot of the fun out of it. He would go to the races, and he couldn't concentrate on cutting the light because he had to get tickets for jegs, right? Or he had to figure out where the catering is. You know, I mean, he was doing all these, he had to fight with the NHRA about the rules. He had to, I watched the man, him and Steve Matusik, plan the banquet for 2 or 3, 4 years in a row, maybe longer than that. I mean, so it's not a fair expectation to put that onus on the back of drag racers. And I understand how it happens, and I understand why it happens. And thank God those guys are willing to carry the torch and carry water, right? But it's not a successful model. And until that group of people wraps their head around that, find me a committee that's had much success, and I'll kiss your ass, right? I mean, you want to put something in the ditch, get 5, 6, 10 people
designed
involved
by committee.
You know, you can't, you will have it in the ditch by daybreak tomorrow. And somebody has to grab, like I said, grab the steering wheel and say, hey, we're going to decide what happens. And you wouldn't have situations like this. I'm sorry, I'm about to have a heart attack.
I feel like I just got grounded.
Sorry.
We're all in trouble.
No, but I mean, I think that I really feel, I'm very convicted in this
exactly
belief point.
Saying,
and I'm so, they should be, the NHRA, that whole group, they're so lucky. I mean, I talked about it, right? With, people like Steve Torrence that are willing to wreck one of these cars, Doug Gordon, right? And have a new one going together a couple of days later. This drag racing at times succeeds only because of the uniquely committed, uniquely passionate people, right? Uniquely passionate people that exist in the sport of drag racing. This is a unique group of people. As I said, if you have a kid that stubs his toe on the basketball floor, that may be enough to make him never play again, right? I mean, but we've got kids that go out and lose in the first round, miss their prom or whatever to go drag racing, getting cussed out by their dad, whatever the case may be, and they can't wait, right, to go do it again next weekend. Our sport is so lucky to have the community that we have, but there has to be people that are willing to step up, right? And maybe even forego their own racing desires, right? I mean, to be honest with you guys, and I don't talk about this a lot, I want to drag race as bad as I want to take my next breath, right? But I know that that's not what I should do, right? I would love to sell all this stuff and go pro mod racing. I mean, that's, you know what I mean? Like that, but you have to, I know that my role and where I'm the most valuable and where I can do the most good is by leading the charge. You know, we have a big bite here because we care about the entire sport of drag racing, but this is what I feel my life's work is. God put me on the planet Earth to spread the gospel of drag racing. This is the great American motorsport. It's what I want to do. It's what I'm passionate about. I do it for free. I do it for money and everywhere in between. But someone has to step up on that side of the fence and say, I'm going to be the guy. I'm going to be the gal that's going to take the ass eatings, ring the phones, organize the troops. I mean, someone has to be willing to do that. It's not always a fun place to be, but until that happens, we're never going to get where that particular group of people want to go. So, and that's the rest of the story.
A good show, good complete show. We got some great interviews, and Wes went on a tirade.
Sorry.
So it's we're good, man.
Yeah,
hit all the bases.
Yeah, whatever. I stand by it, man. I really do.
No,
it's true.
I like
it's true.
Yeah.
We're just giving you a hard time.
No, I stand by it. I feel strongly about it. And I tell you what, I'm not trying to let the cat out of the bag here now, but we're going to do our part because I'm tired of waiting, to be honest with everybody. I feel like I spent all of 2022 hoping that there would be someone do this. So there's news coming soon because I'm looking forward to, I'm not going to be able to sit idly by and allow this to happen. Everybody knows how passionate I am about pro modified drag racing. And, right now, there are 172 active pro mod teams in North America. I keep a running list. There's 172 cars that have earned points in pro modified competition in North America this year. Why pro modified drag racing is not the most successful, the most talked about thing in all of our sport is beyond me, because it should be. Cars that look like cars, right? Universal language of drag racing. It's the only category of drag racing that is massively successful all around the world. They run these cars in Russia. They run these cars in Australia, all across Europe. I mean, this is a very, very strong category of drag racing. It's probably the largest inventory of heads-up cars on the planet. And the fact that we're even having conversations like this is beyond me, because we shouldn't be. We should be a decade, eons further along than we are with this. But when I walk around a drag strip, I looked at Brett Underwood, our vice president of sales and business development here at Drag Illustrated this weekend. at Brainerd International Raceway. And I said, hey, buddy, if you don't believe we're walking on fertile soil, you're crazy. There is so much. I feel so thankful that drag racing has been around at an organized level for 7 decades, and there's still so much to do, right? I mean, I know personally we've been in business for 16 years, but I genuinely feel like we're just getting started. You know what I mean? I wake up every day and I feel like a startup because I feel there's so much left to do, right? We're 177 issues strong, right? We've been doing 270 some episodes of this very show. We go to nearly 100 races a year. But man, I'm telling you, there is so much left to do. We're just scratching the surface. And I don't have to look any further than there was a lot of drag racing going on this past weekend, man. There was a donk race at like Martin, Michigan that was packed out with cars. You got No Prep Kings selling out tracks everywhere they go. NHRA, there was it's almost intimidating number of people in Brainerd this past weekend, man. Really, really, really wild times. And we can't sit on our hands as a sport. There's so much to do and so much to accomplish. And I just, hey, I do think some people have to step into those leadership roles. We have to scrap some of these committees. We have to scrap a gazillion opinions and just take matters into our own hands. I mean, now is the time. Car culture is alive and well. I mean, the fact that everybody wants to talk about electric vehicles day in and day out, I mean, just tells me that people still care about what they drive. It's still a topic of conversation, man. A lot of people have a personal relationship with their vehicle, whether it's a four-wheel drive truck, whether it's a Harley, whether it's a boat, whether it's a car, whether it's a race car, right? Car culture is strong. Turn on your television. There's car crap. JT, tell me if I'm wrong. Is there not like 700 different automotive programs on television at any given time right now?
Yes.
I mean, this is a bad example. Gas Monkey Garage this and Fast and Loud that and No Prep Game Over or whatever it's called and Street Outlaws.
There's more now than any time before. And I think a lot of that may be because of the Street Outlaw show. I think so. Other people have seen, well, I guess it could go back to, I think
it's reality
Monster
TV in
Garage
general, right?
and all that, but then I think Street Outlaws really boomed. And I think a lot of these companies were scrambling going, hey, where can we get our Street Outlaw? Where can we get
absolutely
like, hey,
how can we replicate that?
Interested in cars? Let's have a building show. Or remember Chip Foose's show?
Absolutely, I forgot about that show. What was that called?
Overhauling? Was that
Overhauling? That was it. That was a great show.
I mean,
what was funny though? I would see some of those cars pretty rough.
Yeah, and they were doing live ones at SEMA. Remember?
Yeah, absolutely, man. Car culture is strong, man. And I look back and I see these races that don't have sponsors, and I see some of these entry lists that aren't full. This is a reality that we're accepting. It doesn't have to be this way, but someone's got to pick up the phone. Somebody's got to go shake hands and kiss babies and go promote our sport. Right? Alicia, my wife, let us not forget Pimp My Ride. That was a killer one, right?
What Exhibit? I like that show.
That was a great show.
It was a good show.
Yeah, I'm a hip hop head, so I'm a rap nerd. So I always love getting to see Exhibit work on cars. But anyways,
why does their speaker boxes look so much better than mine? You know what I mean? Because we're like particle board and sheetrock screws and.
Oh man, it's but a lot of those builds are real rough. Like when you I remember I was at Hot Rod Power Tour in 2003, and they were making a big deal about it in St. Louis that like some of the cars that were built on overhauling were going to be there, right? Mm-hmm. And granted they build these things in like 5 days or whatever with whatever they can get their hands on from sponsors. And I remember like there were some of my buddies that had come to hang out, and I was doing the power tour at the time. And I roll up on one of these overhauling cars, and it's like there's overspray on the trim, and the freaking windows the door gap's horrible. The
Looks
fenders
like one of our farm trucks. That we sprayed
you pop the hood, and there's like 6 washers. You know what I mean? Like trying to, you're going, okay, they did this quickly. They did this in a hurry, man. But I think that if I have a kind of closing thoughts, man, I challenge people, dude. We have gotten lazy. Social media is an incredible tool, but it's not the only tool. And we have to be reminded that, like, yes, put your videos on social. Yes, go live, post stories, post on your Instagram, do all those things, but don't just do that. You have to get out and be a man of the people. You got to get out on street corners. You got to get your bullhorn and go running around and be a part of this. And it's stir true. Up the especially if you don't have, there are exceptions. There's hacks. cable television. I'm not saying Sam Corcus from Pilgrim Studios and Street Outlaws and all that. He's not out on street corners necessarily. He's got people to do that for him because of what they've created via television. But if you don't have primetime TV in your hip pocket, you're going to have to do it the old-fashioned way, and you're going to have to go to those people. I mean, Kenny Nolling, love him or hate him, no matter what you think about him, that dude put more tickets in more hands than perhaps anybody in the history of drag racing. This guy, no matter what you think about the dude, he went out and he was a man of the people. He handed out tickets. He posted flyers. He did the hard work, and he got the results kind of turned out accordingly. That's why he had sellout crowds. That's why he had complete pandemonium in St. Louis, complete pandemonium in Houston, complete pandemonium in Texas, and complete pandemonium in Rockingham, because he went out and he put tickets in people's hands. And when you do that, that's a meaningful transaction. You're inviting someone. Hey, come out to the races this weekend. Here's 50 tickets. Give them to your friends. I mean, now there's been a transaction. This guy feels, oh my God, this dude, I don't know him. He's kind of psychotic. He's yelling and screaming, but he handed me a bunch of tickets, and I kind of feel obligated, to put these, to kind of convince some of my friends to go. But you have to, that energy and enthusiasm is infectious, and you have to go out, and it's very difficult. I do my damnedest right here on the show, but it is hard to translate that or to communicate that via some of these tools. You can do it, don't get me wrong, and they contribute, no doubt.
You have to try different things too. Like,
agreed.
Because let's say social media, they're always moving the goalposts,
Yes.
So
how many times do you and I have to go take a seminar or go to some class to figure out what Facebook changed this
or
week?
Try something that, why is it only getting so many likes now? And of course, business page especially, it's even worse. So if you have a racing page, it's going to be even worse because they want your money.
They want you to buy
advertising. For them to for people to see what you want to say, you have to give them money. Here's
is people, and I probably shouldn't share
right?
this, but even we at Drag Illustrated, we own an advertising platform, right? We do over $1 million a year in advertising, right? But we have to spend money on advertising, right? So Absolutely. It's like I can tell you right now on the Drag Illustrated Facebook page, if we're not advertising with Facebook, if we're not spending consistent money, we'll grow 150, say best case scenario, 400 or 500 likes per month. We throw a little bit of money their way. We're on track this month to grow 10,000, right? But it's a pay to play deal. Our likes will go, they'll crest 300,000 next week just because I got a wild hair at my ass to what? Let's throw a little bit of money at Facebook and see how much it impacts our algorithm, and we see it overnight. You know what I mean? The page goes from 100 likes a week or 150 likes a week to 5,000 likes a week. It's insane, but it's just,
and it's even when you're trying to say something good about your sponsor and you just want to tag them, you just killed it. You tagged a business. We're going to cut your reach off, so you have to try other things. You have to go out and shake hands and talk to people, and and not everybody's going to see what you posted. I think that's a big misconception.
Agreed.
With people that aren't real tech savvy, is that, well, I put it on my Facebook page and you see
I've got like 3,000 followers.
Yeah,
and it's unless you're spending any money with them, it's just, I always envision it like a guy running the hand throttle on a dyno. The more money you give Facebook, the more throttle they're going to give you.
That's true.
You know what I mean? But they've got that bitch barely idling, right? If you're not spending any money. So if you've got, they say typically it's less than 0.0, like I think it's like less than 1%. So if you've got,
it's like 0.04 or something like that.
0.04%, let's say, of the likes you have on your page, you know what I mean? That, we just got to come here. How many likes you pay for our bots? Not, you can go buy likes for sure. But if you're doing it through Facebook, it's all organic. It's all real people. You know what I mean? Like they have to, that's part of the reason that Twitter is going to struggle to get this deal done with Elon Musk, because they don't want to acknowledge how many of these things are bot accounts and things like that. They don't. So it's very important for these. Facebook is the biggest social media platform on the planet. Everybody thinks it's like old hat and it's old tech, but it's 3 billion people, bro. 3 billion active users. So it's a very, 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 very valuable tool, man. But anyways, we could go on a marketing thing right now, and I love talking about it, but it's probably the only thing I like talking about as much as drag racing is marketing. But hey guys, thank you all so much for being a part of this. I want to run through real quick and just remind everybody that please help us spread the gospel of drag racing. Click like, click share, click subscribe if you're watching along on YouTube. Not only do we appreciate it, you're joining the movement. You're part of the cause. You're helping us spread the gospel of drag racing. And an even bigger shout out to all the companies that support this show. Flow Racing, Stroud Safety, Redline Synthetic Oils, Elite High Performance, Holly Performance Parts, Sand Haulers of America. Thank you guys for supporting us and supporting this platform so we can give racers an opportunity to tell their story, so we can share the sights, sounds, and all the happenings of races around the world. We surely appreciate it. Above all, these comments, this engagement and interaction, I mean it when I say it, it's like oxygen to us. I love talking to you guys. So if you have a comment, you have a question, you have somebody that you want us to have on the show, tell us. Shoot us a DM on Instagram, on Facebook, on YouTube. Send me an email directly, wes@dragillustrated.com. You can reach JT the very same way, jt@dragillustrated.com, mike@dragillustrated.com. Mike had to bow out early, so we miss him here in the closing moments of the show, going to get his little boy Christian off to open house for his first day of school. So thanks, guys. Thanks, T, for all your help, dude. And we'll see you all next Wednesday, 2 p.m. Central Standard Time. And I can't wait for it, man. Thanks.
Later, y'all.